All right, guys, welcome back to the stream. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Welcome to another episode of MBG Live. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Thank you for tuning in. Even if you're somebody who's watching later on and can't quite catch it live, thank you guys so much. As you can see, Boss is dining behind me. I had to incentivize him to come join us today. So I gave him a little bit of beef jerky. He's a big fan of beef jerky, although I think he did leave a couple pieces in there. I guess he had his fill. But yeah, I know you guys like Boss. I try to make sure he's in here with me when we start out the streams. Usually he's in here. It's getting a little bit colder out. You know, winter's coming. At least where I am, it's starting to get colder. And I notice when that happens, you know, the room I'm in tends to get pretty cold at times compared to other rooms in the home. So, you know, I think he gets a little bit apprehensive during this time because, you know, cats like to stay warm. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me today. Today's topic is going to be focused on what is going on with the console market in Europe, because we have, I mean, my title pretty much tells you, it seems that Sony has ended Xbox in Europe. I mean, I know that sounds intense, maybe a little bit dramatic, but when I go over the new information, you might not think so. It like, my original title for this was going to be seriously, how does Microsoft stop the PS5? But I decided to go with this one instead because I don't know, I think maybe some people might not have understood what I was trying to get at with the original title. But that is a question that I am definitely asking at this point because things are looking pretty spooky. Pretty spooky for Microsoft and the Xbox console. Of course, we have discussions here on the channel about more than just the console itself and the console market, and we're going to dive deep into that discussion. But there are definitely things that there are implications here that I think are a little bit more interesting than some people might realize, at least from what I gather. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to be talking about PlayStation's mobile studio. I think a lot of people may have forgotten that PlayStation, it was either last year or in 2021, one of those years, Sony bought a mobile game studio, and we haven't heard anything from them since, but apparently they have been completely rebranded. And again, it just kind of, once again, we're seeing more internal movement with PlayStation Studios. Yesterday we talked about how the director of Housemarque is departing. And now today we have Sony's own, the only PlayStation mobile studio is now rebranding. On top of that, we're going to be talking about how Google apparently discussed teaming up with Tencent to buy Epic Games, thus showing us once again how consolidation is really seriously hitting a, you know, I don't want to say a peak, but it's increasing. And then finally, we are talking about what's going on with Embracer Group, because it seems like this is, it's not good. It's not good at all what's happening to Embracer Group. And so before we dive into any of these topics, I have to once again give a big shout out to Corey, the legend. Landiga, he comes in and he does what he does best, and he drops 5 more memberships for this community. Guys, I need to see some W's flowing in the chat for Corey. He is one of the most generous gifters on the channel. He supports this community in a huge way. And Corey, I really do appreciate it, man. It's amazing to see how consistently you support this community and how generous you are. And that immediately kickstarts our membership train. What will hopefully be a membership train today. Corey starts us off with 5. So big shout out to you for that, man. And this will allow me to kind of just let everybody know how you can support my channel directly. There are basically three main ways you can do it outside of just watching and liking. So obviously, if you're here watching the content, thank you. It is because of your viewership I am able to do this, and it means a lot. And so if you could just take a second of your time, hit that like button. Not only does it help with YouTube's algorithm a little bit, I'm not so sure how much it really helps anymore these days, truthfully. YouTube's algorithm is always changing, but I imagine it helps a little bit, but more importantly, if you hit the like button, it tells me you're enjoying the streams. It tells me you guys are liking it. Boss is behind my camera right now. He's careful now, boss. He's actually behind my camera. He's doing stuff he shouldn't be doing. So if there are any technical difficulties, it's boss's fault. Maybe I made a mistake bringing him in here with some... Not bringing him in here. I think I may have made a mistake giving him some jerky. He's probably going to get all worked up now. Hold on. Is he going to try and come walk over here? Okay. I thought he was going to try to walk past the camera. That would have been funny. That would have been a first. But yeah, for anybody who watches and hits the like button, thank you guys so much. And as I'm saying that, we have Matt Fu, another longtime member, following up Corey's membership gifts with 5 of his own. Matt Fu, thank you so much, man. I've been noticing you coming around more, consistently gifting some memberships as well. So, Matt, thank you so much for that, man. I'm going to give you a Mark Cerny for that. I know everybody loves Mark Cerny soundbite.
Performance.
I'm telling you, I'm waiting for us to get another, I don't know, like Road to PS5 Pro where we hear from Mark Cerny again, and then I'll get a couple sound bites from that. Or maybe I'll just go back to the original Road to PS5, grab a few more sound bites. But Matt, thank you so much for that support, buddy. Again, I know sometimes people get a little bit tired of the membership trains, but it is because of these guys and their generosity and their gifting that I'm able to do this. And I love doing it. I love having these conversations. And as I am saying that, we have Chris B. Chris B, another longtime member, as you can tell by his membership badge. He comes in and he drops a 10 bomb. You guys immediately kicking off this stream with a significant membership train. Chris B, let's get some W's in the chat for Chris. Between Chris, Matt Fu, and Corey Landiga, you guys just got us up to 20 members already. The goal that I have in place is 25, and we are already at 20 just like that. You guys are incredible. Seriously, thank you so much. This is a great time for me to just once again reiterate something we're doing here on the channel is the Members Lounge. It's something new, but it's exactly what it sounds like. It's for members exclusively. Whether you're a paying member or you were lucky enough to be gifted a membership, we will be doing another Members Lounge today after the stream. There's one up from yesterday. And again, it's something that all of my members can expect consistently. And so just like that, Hellbound 1981 says he wants more people in the Members Lounge. He wants to grow not only the membership, but the company we keep in the Members Lounge. So he drops 5 more memberships as well. Hellbound, another legend. He does it. He gets us to the 25 mark. Guys, before I can even start talking about any of the topics, these guys just wrecked the goal today. 25 memberships just like that. 25 more people gaining access to the Members Lounge. Absolutely love to see it. Hellbound, Chris, Matt, Corey, thank you guys so much. I got to give you another one of those. Unbelievable. So let me update that goal so you guys can see where we are already. And we will dive into this conversation. Let me see here. Give me one moment and we will be good to go. There we go, man. Look at that. 25 already. Incredible community we have. Thank you guys so much for your generosity and for your support. I probably should just also mention, you're saying I'm lagging? Hopefully it's just minor. So yeah, just a little update here. Nothing major. You're saying boss is cuddling? Yeah, dude, he's a big baby. He is. He likes to cuddle a lot. But just, yeah, so something that I cannot, I'm buying a new Ethernet cable. very, very soon. Hopefully within the next week, I'll be able to get it. And I'm looking to get like the highest possible quality Ethernet cable because again, my internet is fine. I have fiber internet. Trust me, like my internet is fine. My connection is fine in terms of like, internet speed and upload, download, the whole thing. My settings on my streaming software is all squared away. So I'm beginning to think it might just be my actual Ethernet cable. It's a pretty old cable. As far as like it's like a I think it's like a 30-foot cable or something. But as far as I could tell, there doesn't seem to be anything that I can see wrong with it. You're saying YouTube has been glitchy and laggy for a while. It could be that. It could be YouTube as well. We've been talking about how they're making a bunch of. They do this every year towards the end of the year where they make a bunch of changes on the back end. But this year it seems to be. If that's what's causing the problem, this year seems to be particularly bad. But just in case it is on my end, that is the only thing in recent memory that changed. Is I'm using a different older Ethernet cable, and I'm beginning to wonder if maybe that is what's causing these kind of small stutters and hiccups that seem to happen consistently over the course of my stream. So, I'll let you guys know when I get that new cable, and we'll see if that fixes the problem. I'm hoping it will, because it's been annoying me too. I cannot figure out what's causing it. And so yeah, just to wrap this up, and we'll dive into the topic here. Obviously, you can support my channel by gifting a membership if you are a member, or just becoming a channel member. But I also just want to let you know you can support my channel by dropping a super chat. You can ask a question, make a statement, give an opinion, everything in between. Super chats also go an incredibly long way in helping my channel out and supporting my content. So a big shout out to you guys as well, and anybody who supports the channel in that way. Thank you guys. Now we're going to move on. Appreciate you guys being patient with me. Sony has seemingly ended Xbox in Europe. How has this happened? How has Sony ended Xbox in Europe? Well, here's the thing. I have to add a little caveat here. When I say ended, I don't mean permanently. It just seems like for now, Xbox is done in Europe. And as a console, I should say, not as a brand, but as a console. It seems like they've lost too much market share to Sony. They are being beat to a pulp by Sony. And I'm not saying this in any fanboy way. I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's when you look at the numbers. I mean, we talked about the data that came out of the US. Sony is beating the Xbox console in Microsoft's own home territory, but nowhere near as badly as what we're seeing with Europe. In places like France, it's, Sony has, the PlayStation 5 has a 90% market share. It's a 9-to-1 ratio. And we are seeing Xbox make all of these major moves that, again, I do think are going to have major implications to the gaming industry and to PlayStation and Sony going forward. No doubt about that. But in the console space in particular, it's honestly, look, man, it's kind of sad to see. It is, because I am afraid at this point that, and it's not, faux fear. It's genuine, where it's like, I am actually getting there's a caveat to that as well. When I say I'm afraid, there could also be a bright side to it, but I'm fearful of the day where Microsoft might come out because of the data that we're seeing here and just say, we're just not making consoles anymore. Now, if they don't make consoles anymore, that's a huge indicator they're going to go third party. And that is kind of maybe the silver lining here. We've talked about that, how Microsoft is seemingly slowly but very surely leaning more so into becoming a third party publisher. You're saying Windows Phone situation. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not that bad yet. Certainly not that bad. I mean, look, Windows Phone, I mean, you're talking about a device that had I think it only had 1 or 2 or 3% market share at one point. Maybe it was a little bit higher than that, but I remember it kind of sunk down to less than 1% market share. And it was well, you can't really fault Microsoft for abandoning Windows Phone at that point, because it's dude, it's less than 1% market share. What are you even doing here? But in the console space, it's not quite that dire. In Europe, it's getting there. In Europe, we are seeing that slow march to a shrinking market share for Microsoft in Europe. We have who sorry, there's no spaces here. So who the hell is Carlos? A member for 1 month says, do you think Sony will add built-in browser slash Bluetooth compatibility in the PlayStation Portal, or will they leave everything as it is and drip feed it slowly over time? I'm not buying. Truthfully, I don't think they're gonna do that. No, I mean something like Bluetooth, maybe, but I my whole thing with them like wanting to add Bluetooth is I don't know why they would wait for something like that. Like I don't know why that wouldn't ship with it. I'm assuming them choosing not to have Bluetooth on the PlayStation Portal means that they're just simply not going to have it. I just think they're making it clear now that it's not a feature on this device. Don't expect it. Now, when it comes to the web browser or built-in browser, I also want to say that's not going to happen because even on the PlayStation 5, like there is a web browser on the PS5, but you have to kind of do a bunch of workarounds to actually access it. And it's something that Sony clearly just wants to not have if they don't have to. Now, they have to have a browser to some extent on the PS5 console because of some of the things you have to navigate. But again, they don't want it forward facing. They don't want people using it, especially just for like casual, browsing on the internet. They want to mitigate that. So I guess to answer your question, maybe it's a little bit of a disappointing answer, but no, I don't think either of these things are coming to the PlayStation Portal. The only thing I feel confident in saying that will come to the PlayStation Portal at some point, I don't know when, is cloud. You'll be able to, if you're a PlayStation Plus premium subscriber and you have the Portal, you'll be able to play games through the cloud on this device. That's the only thing I'm expecting. So I appreciate that. Who the hell is Carlos? But getting back to what's going on here with Microsoft. So we have a report from, let me bring it up here, from gamesindustry.biz. I'm going to read the whole report. It's the European monthly charts. They say here 10.21 million PC and console games were sold across Europe, according to GSD, a slight drop of 2.3% year on year. So it's worth noting that in Europe overall, there is a 2.3% drop. This data covers all games sold digitally by most major games publishers across the Eurozone and physical game sales in all major Eurozone markets. The sales decrease is still impressive when you consider that Call of Duty launched in the October sales window last year, but this year's Call of Duty came out in November. That means Europe achieved only a slight decline despite the absence of Activision's hugely popular first-person shooter. So I actually did forget about that. That's actually very interesting. If anything, it reveals that Europe is holding strong when it comes to the gaming market because it does highlight that Call of Duty did not come out this October. It came out last October. Modern Warfare 2 was huge. So that's actually pretty impressive. They say EA Sports FC 24 was comfortably the best-selling game of the month. Sales of EA's football title were 10% lower than last year's FIFA 23, although some of that can be explained by the brand name change and the fact that there was a Winter World Cup last year to help generate excitement around the sport. So just want to mention this real quick. There was like this big conversation at one point where, is EA and their, football title, is it going to struggle once they drop the FIFA name? And it turns out that no, it's not. It's doing just fine. So that's pretty interesting. They say here Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Mirage is number 2, beating Spider-Man 2 by a very narrow margin. And Assassin's Creed Mirage was on sale for 2 weeks longer. Mirage's first 4 weeks on the market are over 49% lower than what Assassin's Creed Valhalla managed. Mirage is billed as a smaller, more classical take on the series, and so there was no expectation that it would compete with Valhalla. Compared with older Assassin's Creed games, Mirage sales are 22% higher than 2018's Odyssey and 6% higher than Origins. On to Spider-Man 2, and the PS5's game launch was strong, with the first 2 weeks up nearly 30% compared to Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 and almost 3 times higher than Miles Morales in 2020. So Definitely some good news here for Spider-Man 2. Apparently, Spider-Man 2 is very close to outselling Assassin's Creed, even though Assassin's Creed had 2 more months on the market. Certainly interesting and I don't want to say unexpected, but it just, shows it's doing well. And it did better than 2018 Spider-Man. So it's up nearly 30%. And it's like, as they're saying here, nearly 3 times higher than Miles Morales. The article continues, compared with last year's big PlayStation game God of War Ragnarok, the first 2 weeks of sales for Spider Man 2 are 28% lower. However, that's because God of War was also released on PlayStation 4. If we just focus on PS5 sales, Spider Man 2 outsold Ragnarok by 8% after 2 weeks. So, really, really interesting and telling data here that we've been waiting, at least I've been waiting for a long time to figure out. And it reveals to you, at least in Europe, how many PS4 players decided they're going to buy Ragnarok on the PS4. They're not going to upgrade to the PS5, or maybe they can't upgrade to the PS5, but they have access to this game, so they're going to buy it. So when you look at Ragnarok in the first 2 weeks of sales, 28% higher than Spider-Man 2 because of the PS4. But if we're just looking at Ragnarok sales on PS5 and Spider-Man 2 sales on PS5, apparently Spider-Man 2 was actually 8% higher. Really interesting stuff there. You can kind of begin to see why Sony maybe decided to release games like Ragnarok onto the PS4 and make them cross-gen because, clearly it helped them, right? But continuing on here, it says in fourth place is Super Mario Bros. Wonder, although the Nintendo game may have charted higher as this data does not include the download figures. Nintendo doesn't share digital numbers with the charts companies. Launch sales of Wonder are double that of 2017's Mario Odyssey, when the Nintendo Switch install base was much, much smaller, nearly 59% bigger than 2020's Super Mario 3D All-Stars, and nearly 53% bigger than 2021's Super Mario 3D World, plus Bowser's Fury. Nintendo has announced that Super Mario Bros. Wonder is the fastest-selling Mario game in Europe. Also new in the charts for October are Lords of the Fallen at number 5, Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1, number 16, UFC 5 at number 17, Detective Pikachu returns at number 32, Sonic Superstars at number 33, and Forza Motorsport at number 42. So, sheesh. Number 42 for Forza. God damn. In terms of individual countries, EA Sports FC24 was number 1 in most markets, but things differ in terms of the second position. The second best-selling game of October in France is Super Mario Bros. Wonder. In Germany, Assassin's Creed, while in Italy and Spain, Spider-Man 2. Now, we're going to move on to what I think is the more relevant topic here, which is talking about the console's performance for the month of October in Europe. So it says, over in the console hardware, the PlayStation 5 is comfortably the number 1 console in Europe across tracked markets. UK and Germany are not included. We went over the UK data already. PS5 sales are up 143% over October of last year, driven by the availability of stock this time around. Nintendo Switch is at number 2, despite a 20% drop in sales compared to last October. The Xbox Series X and S sales, they continue to struggle in Europe. They are down 52% year over year. In total, 481,000 consoles were sold across the markets. Compared with September, overall market sales are nearly 16%, are up nearly 16%. PS5 sales are up 11%. Switch sales are up 10%. Xbox sales are down over 20%. It says, please note that Xbox's big exclusive of the year, Starfield, launched in September, while PlayStation and Nintendo's big games, being Mario and Spider-Man, launched in October. And in terms of peripheral accessories, 1.14 million products were sold and tracked. And they don't seem to say what the best-selling accessory is, but holy shit, that is bad news for Xbox, at least the console. That is not good at all. And as I'm saying this, we have another legend returning, keeping the membership train going strong. You absolutely love to see it. Exley 3000, guys. I want to see some W's in the chat for Exley coming in, getting us past our goal. past 25 up to 30 members. So 30 new members on the day. Exley, thank you so much for that,
Thank
my
you.
friend.
I
I
appreciate it.
appreciate all the love and all the support that you guys show. It really does mean a lot. Let me see. Which soundbite should I use, Exley? Exley, you let me know in the chat. Which soundbite would you like? You want Metal Gear? I haven't used Metal Gear in a while. But thank you so much for that, man. Yeah, dude, you're saying, and that is with Forza and Redfall and Starfield. Actually says he does want. There you go. I hope it played. I hope it played. It should have played. So thank you for that, Excellent. Thank you to everybody gifting. Yeah, so again, I want to highlight this. Irfan says this is a bloodbath. It is. I mean, it is. There's no denying it. I don't know that I feel good seeing Xbox as a console get obliterated this badly, because it's just like, this is going to encourage Microsoft to exit the console market. And my big concern with Microsoft potentially one day exiting the console market is that's a major player no longer competing in that space. And obviously that would be good for Sony. That would be good for them as a company, as a brand. But at that point, we have to rely on Nintendo alone to provide as much competition as possible to the PS5 console. And I have no doubt that Nintendo can do that. I think Nintendo is going to do that. I've talked to you guys about this in the past. It's worth bringing up here. I think with the Nintendo Switch 2, it's going to get a ton of third-party support. I think Nintendo is going to be able to competently compete with Sony due to the level of third-party support they're going to get, and it's going to make people have to make some decisions. Now, maybe there's room for both. Maybe there won't be nearly as much competition as I think, because maybe people are just going to say Sony has exclusives, Nintendo has exclusives. These exclusives are only on their console. You know, maybe Sony will put them on PC, but years later. So yeah, I'm going to buy a PlayStation 5 for the PS5 exclusives, and I'm going to buy the Nintendo Switch 2 for the Switch 2 exclusives. And if that is what happens, guys, if this is what happens, if we continue to see Xbox sales falter this badly going into next generation, at that point, it's going to become clear that it is Microsoft choosing to not have console exclusives anymore that has done this to their console. Now, maybe that doesn't matter to them. I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft is at a point where, who cares if Xbox sales are down 52% in Europe and PS5 sales are up 143%. Who cares, because that's not our main priority, right? But we do have to understand that the Xbox consoles, they are something that Microsoft has to care about to some extent, because they serve as an entry into Game Pass. PC obviously serves as a major entry point into Game Pass, but Game Pass is called Xbox Game Pass. Microsoft absolutely loves selling people a Series S and a Series X, not just because, hey, it's a console sale, but because the chances of a person being willing to spend $300 or $500 on a console and then saying, you know what, sure, I'll subscribe to Game Pass. What is that, $11? You know, or $15 for Ultimate, or what is it, 16 or 17 now? Very, very high. The same cannot be said for devices like PCs. I mean, PC definitely is a big deal and serves as a major vector for them to push Game Pass, but people don't just use PCs for gaming. That's the important thing. The console is a dedicated gaming device. So if Microsoft sells, 40 million Xbox consoles, there's a really good chance that at least half of those people who bought that console, or at least a third, are going to subscribe to Game Pass because they bought a dedicated gaming device. Here's this dedicated gaming subscription service. Boom. This is why I know it's easy for people to say that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? And I get it. Maybe it doesn't. But from my perspective, it does matter. It has to. Just talking about how these businesses, how these companies work, I assure you, Microsoft is not happy that Sony is obliterating them this way in Europe. And they know it's only going to get worse when the Switch 2 comes out. They're not happy about it because all of the people who are choosing to buy PS5s over the Xbox, choosing to buy even a Switch over the Xbox, potential Game Pass subscribers lost to the competition. Everybody who just bought a PS5 in Europe, highly likely to consider subscribing to PlayStation Plus now. That is the opposite of what Microsoft wants. The literal opposite. And what makes it, again, what I just said about Microsoft selling consoles as a way to sell people into Game Pass or get people into Game Pass, the exact same thought process applies to Sony. People in Europe buy a PS5, ignore the Xbox, buy a couple games for the PS5. Before you know it, they're getting comfortable. Yeah, I'll subscribe to PlayStation Plus, or I want to play FIFA Online or whatever. Yeah, I'll subscribe to it. Hey, look, Sony has their own gaming catalog with PS Plus Extra and Premium. Maybe I'll check that out. I mean, it's just, this is where people are under the impression that Microsoft is dominating because of how much money they're spending and how many companies and developers and studios they're buying. And don't get me wrong, they are making a shift in the industry, and they are, I mean, you know, their revenue is going to skyrocket. But in terms of market share in the console space, it's not doing, literally at this point in time, anything for them. So the next question you have to ask is this, and I think it's a fair question to ask. If all of these moves that Microsoft is making, buying Activision Blizzard, buying Bethesda, pushing Game Pass as hard as they are, trying to provide the best value in gaming, if they're doing all of this as aggressively as they are, and it's producing no results whatsoever in the console space, what's it doing in the subscription space for them? It's a fair question to ask, because I don't know that we're going to have that answer right now. I don't know if we're going to have that answer anytime soon, but it's just difficult for me to believe that, because here's the thing I want to emphasize as well. When we look at these console numbers, again, down 52%, while their competition is up nearly 150%. That is not a minor thing. That is huge. I mean, that is like life support level. Like, you are losing ground at a rate so rapid, you have to do something. Like, you have to do something. But that's the thing, is I don't know what Microsoft can do. This is why I titled this the way I did, where it's like, I think Sony may have actually ended them in Europe, because, like, what do they do to boost console sales in Europe? What can they do that they haven't already done? We're giving you Game Pass. We're trying to give you the cheapest entry point into the console space. $300, $11 a month for our games catalog. I'm sorry, Zombie Fanatic, I didn't miss your super chat. I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it momentarily. I'm just getting my thoughts out. Make real I mean, honestly, Devil Shooter, this is why I'm having this conversation, because it seems to me it really is beginning to seem like exclusives seemingly matter way more to console sales than maybe Microsoft realized. Maybe not. I mean, we're still a little too, it's still a little too early to call it. But I did say at the beginning of this generation, Xbox is seemingly getting off to a much better start than the Xbox One did. At least it seemed that way. And I thought, okay, maybe them not having actual dedicated console exclusives is fine. Because that's what I was told with the Xbox One generation. Everybody was saying, dude, people who want to buy consoles are going to buy it. They're not worried about whether it's available here or there. They're going to buy the Xbox console. They're going to buy the Xbox game that they want to play on it. And I did believe that. For a little bit, I actually did believe that, where I'm like, okay, maybe there is truth to that, because the PS5's off to a fantastic start, but the Xbox seems to be holding its own. Flash forward 3 years later, no, that's not what's happening. The PS5 is trouncing the series consoles. The series consoles are going down and down and down, even in the midst of more acquisitions. And you have to ask, why? And I think it's obvious. I think it's obvious that Microsoft is telling customers, You do not have to buy our console if you want our games. The competition is saying you do have to buy our console. So Microsoft is making it, they're killing the Xbox console, dude. There's no other way to say it. They are killing the Xbox console by saying that, because you're making the choice for the customer where it's like, oh, okay, well, Sony isn't giving me that option, nor is Nintendo. So I'm going to go buy both of those or one of those. And maybe I'll consider going to Xbox. And that's just so weird to me, because it's like, I don't know, man. It once again emphasizes that Microsoft is placing, they're hedging all of their bets on Game Pass and subscriber numbers. And I'm just surprised. That's all. Like, I'm surprised to see that Microsoft is actually allowing this to happen to their console business, where it's just like, dude, you are getting murdered. Like, you are letting the competition murder your console, and you're doing nothing to stop it. Nothing. That's crazy to me. Like, I never would have thought that, especially when I look back to the way that Phil Spencer announced the Xbox Series X, the most powerful console, Hellblade 2, and then now it's just like, yeah, no one's buying it. All right, I'm sorry to keep you guys waiting. The Zombie Fanatic with the super chat says, "Hey MBG, how are you doing, bro?" I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well too. You're saying, do you think the Series X revision will come with a disk drive? And what do you think the next Xbox will be like? Yeah, so this Xbox revision, apparently there is going to be a Series X revision. And the leak claimed that the revision was going to be, it wasn't going to have a disk drive. It was going to be digital only. But I think, I could be wrong. I swear I think somebody in the know, or some Xbox insider, somebody said that it is going to have a disk drive similar to like what Sony's doing, that can attach and detach. And I do think Microsoft is going to have to do that, because again, it would be wild, in my opinion, for Microsoft to do that. I mean, regular Series X consoles would still be out in the wild. Maybe they could still produce them. I mean, I don't know. I guess the assumption is, if this Xbox console is going to be a full-blown refresh, you assume at that point it means that it's the only console that's going to be sold, or like a Series S refresh and a Series X refresh, and those are the only consoles. Like, I don't think Microsoft is going to continue to produce the regular Series X that they are now, the rectangular shape, with a disk drive. But that's why I'm saying, like, Sony, yeah, they're offering a digital PS5 Slim, but they have, they're pushing the disk drive model, and you can buy the disk drive separately. It would be insane. Frankly, it would. I know most people playing on Xbox are digital. I know that the Game Pass ecosystem is as digital as it gets, where you're just renting games to play them, which is fine. But it's like, still, that would be a crazy move for Microsoft to make, and it would convince me further. If Microsoft did that, it would convince me further that they are seriously looking to exit this market sooner rather than later, because they were like, at this point in time, they should definitely either have it ships with a disk drive, or you can buy it separately, like you can with Sony. I just think that would be wild to just in the middle of the gen be like, no, we're going digital only. I would also hate Microsoft for doing that, in the same way I would hate Sony, because that would convince me, like, not convince me, but it would get me very worried that it's like, Sony's watching Microsoft do this. If Microsoft goes all digital with this Xbox refresh, and they say digital only now, that's going to be very tempting for Sony. At that point, Sony might say, oh, well, you know what? Microsoft did it. Well, with the PlayStation 6, let's just go digital only. They can't, dude. I'm sorry. Like, Sony can't do that. I think Microsoft would be making a huge mistake if they did that. I hope they don't. Because I just think that's going to make the situation even worse for them in terms of console sales. I will say, it's unlikely that I think Sony would copy Microsoft and follow them in that regard, because Sony's data is different from Microsoft's. If Microsoft does go all digital with this Xbox Series X refresh, it's because they're looking at their data and literally no one's using discs, like less than 1%, or something, or like 2%, or just some crazy low number where it's like, sorry, we got to rip the Band-Aid off. That's not that's not a situation Sony's in. Sony still has quite a few people, a good chunk of people, a healthy percentage of people still buying disc-based games and playing their PS5s that way. So I'm not necessarily that worried, but I just think it would be a bad sign going forward because we always want to have that option as far as I'm concerned. And Microsoft can obviously afford to provide that option. I don't think it would be a bad thing for them to do. Certainly not. I think it would be a great thing as long as they continue to provide that option. We have Corey, the legend Landiga, with a super chat as well, saying, are Nintendo and Sony teaming up again entirely or only for the movies? It's a great question. We did see that Sony is teaming up with Nintendo for the Legend of Zelda movie, and it's Sony Pictures teaming up with Nintendo. It's not like it's PlayStation Productions or the PlayStation brand teaming up with them, but it's it's kind of like an extending of the olive branch, I guess, here, where it's a start. It's significant. It's something. It is these two big Japanese gaming companies. Granted, Sony is more than a gaming company, but still, Sony's biggest, their most successful aspect of their company is the video game division. So, two absolute juggernaut titans in the gaming industry coming together in a collaborative effort on a very significant project that's going to make both of them a ton of money. It's significant. I don't feel confident or comfortable, I should say, saying that, yeah, this is definitely going to lead to some kind of like further partnership that's going to bleed into gaming where we're going to see Nintendo and Sony teaming up, but it could. Like, this could be the start of that. It could not be. It could just be Sony's like, no, hell no, we're not doing that. Nintendo's like, no, we want to keep it totally just in the movie, TV, that's it. Sony Pictures, we're good. It could just be that. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just that because they are still competitors at the end of the day. But with everything I'm saying here, with the level of consolidation that's occurring in this industry, knowing that, again, one of the topics we're going to be discussing today is how Google discussed teaming up with Tencent. Google and Tencent to buy Epic Games. Like, these are the conversations that are happening behind closed doors. These are the things that are in talks. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when these things begin to happen. And this is why I almost do think that Sony and Nintendo might start kind of looking at each other and being like, look, we have our differences. We have our way of running our businesses, and we've had a not so great history. But maybe there are a couple things we should consider. Maybe we should just start talking a little bit, getting a little bit friendly with one another. Maybe watch each other's backs a little bit here because shit's about to go crazy. I really do think that this could be something, because like, you have to think the executives at Sony and Nintendo, they're not stupid. Like, they're definitely looking at each other like, are we doing this? Like, yeah, we're doing it. Yeah. They're probably popping some champagne or something. I mean, it's a pretty big deal what they're doing with the Zelda movie. And we have Corey, the legend Landiga. He's coming in and he's saying this membership train is not coming to a stop. Not yet. I'm going to drop 10 more memberships onto the community. Boom, just like that. Corey, the legend, does it again. He drops 10 more.
Holy shit.
Insane, dude. Corey, seriously, thank you so much, man. The generosity you have continued to show this community. And Exley 3000. These guys are popping off right now. Exley 3000 follows up with 5 more memberships gifted. 5 more. 15 more members just like that. We are sitting at 45 on the cusp of breaking another record today. Hitting another record. Shattering it. On the cusp of hitting 50 members. Exley, Corey, you guys are absolute legends here on the channel. You know it. Everybody here knows it. Thank you for the consistent support, man. It's amazing to see. So that's 45 people. Guys, I just want to tell you, if you're new here, we have been getting a couple of new viewers. Hit their icons. Click the gift icons up top from Corey or Exley or anybody else who gifts, and make sure you opt in for the chance to receive a free channel membership. The memberships that you receive as a gift are non-recurring. Obviously, I would appreciate it if you consider remaining a member. but it's just a straight up free month of a membership, and you gain access to the members lounge thanks to these guys. And Matt Fu, he does it. You guys did. I can't believe it. You guys did it. You just shattered 50 members like it was nothing. Matt Fu comes in and drops another 5. And it's off the rails at this point. Hellbound 1981 drops 5 more. 5 more. These guys are going crazy today. That brings us up to 55 members. 55 members. Guys, to everybody who was just gifted a membership, to those 55 members, stick around. Stick around by the time we get to the end of the stream. Join me in the members lounge. There's actually something I want to discuss with you guys there. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you guys. Seriously, Hellbound, Matt, Exley, Corey. You guys just popped off right there. 55 members. I have to update the member goal again. This community is incredible. You guys power the channel. Seriously. So let me update this goal. Still can't believe it. Good stuff, man. 55 members on the day. Thank you, guys. I'm sorry. I know I sound like a broken record. I can't help but continue to thank you. It means a lot. It really does. Saying stop thanking my subs. It's boring. I can't, man. I can't. I know it gets a bit much. But Corey says we got to put you to work. I know, man. All right, I'm going to get back on track. Let me see here. So yeah, Corey, to actually finish off with what you asked in your super chat, I do think it is a very significant thing. A very significant thing that Sony and Nintendo are partnering for this Legend of Zelda movie, because it just shows that they are coming together and willing to work together in the name of making more money and growing their brands. That I just want it to be known that Sony is helping their competitor, or what was once a competitor. They're helping them expose their IP even further with The Legend of Zelda. We have Dreadful 83. Guys, I see you got W's flowing in the chat. Dreadful 83 says he wants to get in on this today, and he drops a membership gift himself. He decides he wants to pay it forward as well. Dreadful 83, thank you so much for that, my friend. It's very kind of you to do. Very generous.
Thank you.
Love to see it. I'll throw a Jim Ryan in there. I feel like I haven't played a Jim Ryan soundbite in a long time. I mean, I know he's retiring. But still a great quote from Jim. So thank you for that, buddy. We have Alan L. Gould, a member for 5 months. He says, MBG, forget about Xbox. They died 10 years ago, and that means it's impossible to get back up. By the way, you are the best YouTuber. I'm proud of you. Well, thank you so much for that. That's very kind of you, man. I'm glad you enjoyed the content. They died 10 years ago, and they can't get back up. I mean, Xbox as a brand obviously has not died, right? Like, Xbox as a brand is arguably in, at least publicly facing, from what I can tell, it's in the best position I've ever seen it in, personally. But that's not, and even like revenue-wise, like now that they own Activision, like the Xbox brand is fine. And it's actually in a good place, I think. But what you're really referring to here is, I think, the Xbox console, Xbox as a console. I don't know. I'm struggling to come to terms with this. Oh, sorry. I got very confused there for a second at what I was looking at. I'm struggling to come to terms with the idea that the Xbox console is actually dead, because if it really is dead, then it just means that the only reason it exists is because Microsoft decided not to pull the plug, right? And like, it's just, they're just allowing it to just be there for the sake of being there. It doesn't actually serve like a truly meaningful competitive purpose. And that is difficult for me to accept, because that really does, like, look, man, there are 2 things that could happen. Well, there are 3 things. The first is what I just said. It just sits there and it doesn't really serve much of a purpose. It's for there just for anybody who wants it. Microsoft really doesn't care, and we just continue to see the sales dwindle and dwindle, and we just realize over time that this is not the console competition that we were thinking we were going to get. That's one thing that could happen. The second thing is they could, I don't know, like maybe who knows, like maybe there won't be another console generation for Xbox. I'm not saying that's likely. Right outside. I'm not saying that's likely, but it's a possibility. And if that happens, there's two things. There's at that point, there's only two paths Microsoft can go down. And that is, no matter what, they're going to be focused on Game Pass, but you're now putting Game Pass everywhere you can. PlayStation's excluded. At least you would assume they will be excluded, because I don't think Sony's ever going to put Game Pass on PlayStation. You assume Nintendo would be excluded. Maybe Nintendo would with the Switch. That would be a more interesting scenario. But I'm assuming both of them would be excluded, and Game Pass will pretty much be everywhere else. And so what that will ultimately result in is not like Microsoft will still have exclusive games, just except now they're Game Pass exclusives. And they achieved having an and I do think this is Microsoft's end game here. I do. We've talked all about the idea of them wanting to get Game Pass on the PlayStation, but I'm not even going to consider that, because I just don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't even think it's worth entertaining the idea of Game Pass going to PlayStation. But I think Microsoft's end game here is to just squeeze Sony as much as they can and apply as much pressure on them as they can in the best way that they can, which is not through the console, but through having exclusive games, like games that just aren't going to release on your platform, and they're going to release exclusively on our platform, and our platform is not competing with yours. That's the key factor there. Our platform is Game Pass. It is not a console. We have transcended the console. We have Game Pass. It's everywhere we can get it. You don't want it. You don't get our games. And I think the idea is Microsoft is hoping that eventually, as enough time goes by, they release enough games exclusively on Game Pass and on PC and on these, any other device or platform that allows it. They do this. They do it enough. They do it. Again, the hope is have high reviewing games, have games that do well. Maybe eventually down the line, Sony falters. Maybe Sony stumbles. Maybe they release some duds. Maybe their live service endeavor blows up in their face. Maybe console sales eventually do start to slow down rapidly. And in this moment, Microsoft would have, it's not that they would have won, because it won't happen like that. It won't happen that simply, but it will open up an opportunity for Microsoft that they've been trying to create for themselves for the past 7 years, which is this titan that is Sony in the gaming industry has finally slipped. And I think, that's the thing, is people think that's Sony now, and that's not Sony now. Sony is not in the best position right now, but they haven't slipped. They haven't fallen. It's just, they're still doing great. But let me put it to you this way. The difference between Sony and Microsoft, Sony and Xbox, is that if Sony slips in their gaming division, they're going to feel it a lot more. They have a lot more to lose than Microsoft does right now. And it may not seem that way, but that is the truth. That is kind of the ace up Microsoft's sleeve. And this is why Phil Spencer is the way he is these days, because he knows this. Phil, trust me, Phil is part of the plan. He knows this. Phil knows the ace that they have up their sleeve. He has Microsoft's blessing. He is part of the Xbox brand is part of the Microsoft family now. It's no longer a side project. It's no longer just some side thing and, whatever, if it sucks, it sucks. We don't give a shit. The Xbox console was not welcomed into the Microsoft family, but the Xbox brand was. And Phil knows this, and Phil knows that Microsoft will continue to do what they do best, which is wait it out, keep making significant moves, as many significant moves as they can, shake up the industry, acquire behemoths like Activision Blizzard, double your revenue just like that overnight. So it's like, yeah, we may be dying in the console space. We may already be dead in the console space. But believe it or not, Microsoft is betting on the console space eventually failing. Microsoft is betting that what has happened to the Xbox will eventually occur to the PlayStation console. And when that day comes, Microsoft will be the leader because they said, hey, what you guys now have to do, we were busy doing that 7 years ago, 10 years ago, however long it may take, 15 years ago, it doesn't matter. We already did it. So look around. We're established, you're not. Suddenly, who's the leader then? Microsoft is banking on a paradigm shift, a complete market shift. Not this generation, not even next generation probably, but eventually. And that is the play they are making. I have to imagine if I'm aware of this, surely Sony is aware of this. You're saying MBG knows Sony and Nintendo will be prepared. Well, that's the thing. I'm not saying they won't be prepared. But I also see I'm not even convinced that Microsoft is making the right play here, because the one thing Microsoft could end up struggling with, and where this could go wrong for Microsoft, because that's the thing. What I'm describing, it makes it seem like Microsoft, they got it all figured out. There's no risk. Well, no. There is a major risk with this bet that Microsoft is making, and it's that they do have timetables. Like, they may be one of the richest companies in the world, and they may be able to afford to keep Xbox as a brand alive for as long as they want, but it doesn't mean they will. They could have done that for Windows Phone. They could have done that for Zoom. They could have done that for Skype and all these other things. They could have done it, but you have to ask yourself, like, why didn't they? Why didn't they? And it's because too much time goes by, competitors win out over them, and they just decide, you know what, we're just going to cut our losses and move on. I don't like Microsoft has enough right now to give them the confidence that we can do this. If we just keep pushing, we're going to do this. And I honestly, I think they will, but the big risk is that it just doesn't happen the way, like, anywhere, like anytime remotely soon. And they will suffer for that. Like, we don't know what Activision and Call of Duty is going to, like, we know now what Starfield and Bethesda, for now anyway, we know what they did with games like Redfall and Starfield. And it's not that they did anything bad. Well, I mean, maybe Redfall probably didn't help, but Starfield did good things for Game Pass. Starfield did good things for Xbox, but it's like, it just wasn't anywhere near the level. No matter what anybody tells you, it just wasn't gonna, like, Starfield was never gonna be the thing to do it. So now the next question line is, okay, well, is Activision the thing to do it? Is Call of Duty the thing to do it? Because if it's not, then you're going to see Microsoft, I don't want to say in panic mode, but, and that's the thing, is like, it's ridiculous. In my opinion, it's ridiculous to even consider that, because Call of Duty is going to do it. Just straight up. Like, that's the reality. Call of Duty is going to do it. Microsoft knows this. Everybody knows this. Activision, like, everybody knows this. This is why they pushed so desperately to get Activision, because Microsoft knew that Call of Duty is going to do for us what nothing else can. Straight up. So we may be paying $68 billion. And yes, mobile as well. Mobile is a huge aspect of this. But in terms of really becoming a dominant player in the gaming space, that's what Call of Duty is going to do for us. Because if there's something that I've learned, even this year with this year's Call of Duty release and in past years, is like Call of Duty can fuck up and it'll do just fine. You can have a bad year for Call of Duty. Yeah, you might not make all the money, but you'll be just fine. That's the power of the Call of Duty brand. And they make an unbelievable amount of money. So all this is to say that the first half of this discussion was focused on how it is not good for Xbox, for Microsoft, that the Xbox console is basically dead at this point. They have zero, they're done in Europe as far as I'm concerned. And I do think that at the end of the day, this is hurting their growth potential. I think that is obvious. It is hurting their ability to get more subscribers. They are losing people to the PS5, to the Switch. But when we look at the long-term play, there is one major question that we just don't know the answer to. And it is the question that I bet you if you were to ask Sony and Nintendo and then ask Microsoft, they would have opposite answers. Maybe not. Maybe they would be more similar than we think. But if you were to ask Sony and Nintendo, how do you guys feel about the console future? You know, like do you see the PlayStation console just kind of fading away and the PlayStation business transforming? I'm sure Sony would say like, yeah, we're ready for that to one day happen. And we're making moves to potentially prepare for that. But if you look at, again, you look at what's happening with the PS5, Sony will probably tell you like, no, we're still doing great with console sales. And, this is our bread and butter for our business. And it has been since the inception of PlayStation. And it just doesn't seem to be slowing down. So I think that's what Sony's answer would be. I think Nintendo's answer would probably be more towards the console. You know, they'd probably say like, we've proven we will innovate in any way we need to in the hardware space to keep the Nintendo console alive and thriving. But who knows? Maybe even Nintendo is slowly behind the scenes preparing for major future changes that could occur. But I bet you Microsoft's answer, and we kind of did get Microsoft's answer from Phil Spencer himself, where he's like, yeah, we're not going to out console. The Xbox console, it's just there for those who want it. It's not the priority. That's not the future. That's not how we're going to get where we want to go. The fact that Microsoft doesn't care that their console is dead or dying, however you want to view it, the fact that they don't care about this reveals their long-term play. Like, as clear as day. And I know that some people might say, well, duh, that's obvious. But like, I mean, I don't know that it's been that obvious up until this point. I mean, this console's on a fucking lifeline. It's on life support at this point. And it's like, Microsoft doesn't care. So they really do believe that the future of this, of the console market is not bright. Like, they really do believe that what they are doing eventually, Sony's going to have to copy them and follow them. And even Nintendo, like, that's what they believe. And I don't know. I'm still at a point where it's like, I understand why Microsoft believes that. I understand why they think that, but I'm not totally convinced. You're saying everyone knows this except you. No, that's the thing, is like, in the long run, I agree that that's probably where things are headed. It's difficult for me to say that, because it's like, I just have to accept that, hey man, the way you have grown up enjoying games and interacted with games like that, in the next like 15 or so years, like, that's just not going to be or like maybe 20, maybe it'll take longer, like 20 years. It's just not going to be a thing. But it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's what makes it so hard for me to believe that is that, like, dude, every generation we're kind of told that, consoles are on their way out. Consoles are on their way out. The last generation, the console market's shrinking. Now, granted, it's not growing like rapidly. Certainly not. Maybe it's not even growing at all. But it just still won't happen. And people always it's always just, it's the technology's not there. The technology's not there. It's like, okay, I know it's not there yet, but like, when's it going to be there? And when it's there, I don't know. Like, are people really just going to decide they don't want native hardware anymore? They don't want a dedicated box anymore. Is like, I mean, I'm asking that seriously. Like, is that what people are going to decide? Because what we should be seeing right now is the console market shrinking. And we're not seeing that. As well, maybe on Xbox's side, maybe we are seeing that, but we know why that is. But for Sony and Nintendo, the console market isn't shrinking for them. They're doing amazing. Like not just one of them, both of them. So it's like, I'm not in any rush. Like, even if this is the long term play, I can understand why Microsoft wants to position themselves where they want to be ready and they want to be there before anybody. They want to hit the ground running, and they're preparing for that now. And I think Sony is too. Like, let's not pretend Sony isn't doing these things. They did PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium. They are putting some of their exclusives on PC, and they're putting some of their exclusives on the PlayStation Plus quicker. Like, they're investing in cloud gaming. They're investing in mobile gaming. They're making their own acquisitions. I'm not saying, and live service games, Sony is doing their own thing as well on this front. But you can just tell that Sony is not operating in the same way Microsoft is, where to them the console's just a kind of like, yeah, it's going to die. Who cares? We're going to move past it. No, it's actually like the opposite. Everything they're doing, they literally created a peripheral that is, you can only use it with your, like when it's attached to your PS5 with the PlayStation Portal. Like, they're doing the literal opposite. And this is why it's just difficult for me to believe that after the PlayStation 6 generation, Sony's just going to be like, and our business model is just going to be completely uprooted. And it turns out we are just going to, we're going to follow what Microsoft did. Corey says it's time for work. I appreciate, he has to head out. I appreciate you stopping by, Corey. Seriously, guys, let's just give Corey one more shout out. He's always stopping in, always dropping gifts for us. So I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. Thank you for always showing up to the streams and being such an avid supporter of the content. It means a lot. So hopefully I'll catch you maybe tomorrow, Corey. I just have a difficult. I mean, look, I don't know the future. Obviously, there could, the PlayStation 7 and even the PlayStation 6 generation is far away from now, but the PlayStation 7 generation is really far away from now. So the things that could change, the changes that could occur in the industry between now and then could be so massive that, yeah, who knows? By the time we get to, like, I don't know, what year would a PlayStation 7 even come out? PlayStation 6 comes out like 2028, maybe 2034, something like that. Ironically enough, around the time Microsoft can make Call of Duty exclusive. Oh, shit. It turns out Microsoft wasn't, when they said they were playing the long game, they weren't just talking about the PlayStation 6 generation. They were talking about the PlayStation 7 generation. Holy shit. I mean, they really were playing the long game here. But yeah, ironically enough, that is kind of around the time the PlayStation 7 should be a thing, right? And Sony should be preparing to announce it and talk about it. How old will I be in 2035? Oh my God, I would be, holy shit, I would be like in my 40s. That is crazy. That is fucking crazy to think. Yeah, who knows, bro? That's a you when you talk about these numbers, right? These years, like you just kind of throw out these numbers. You don't really think about like how much time that actually is. And oh my god, I would actually be my 40. Yeah, I'd be 42. I'd be 42 at that point. Holy shit. Who knows what I'll be like then, you know? Who knows? Maybe I'll be totally converted to cloud gaming. Like, guys, this is the fucking future. Are you kidding me? This is amazing. Fucking get shit beamed right into my brain. Who knows where we're gonna be? So I get it, man. Like, I guess I'm just saying, like, see, that's the thing. I'll be like 42, and my generation still grew up with consoles, and I think the console will stick around for many more, for like quite a few decades. I do. Like, I don't think it's just like the console's going to die in the next 10 years because there's still going to be too many people like me. Too many people like me that still want to go out and buy the hardware, you know? At least certainly enough to keep it alive, and I don't know, I would hope thriving, but I think, eventually, yeah, we're going to reach a point where that generation that still likes, that still likes to have the tangible hardware, eventually, we will all die out. I don't mean literally die out. I mean, of course, some of us, yes, unfortunately, but you're saying I'm wrong. I'm missing a huge aspect that I'm not considering. Well, okay, I mean, you let me know. And actually, Novinzer, you have a super chat here, and I got to read some of these. Sorry to keep you guys waiting. You're saying people are simple. Xbox changing names confuses them. Yeah, I mean, that is true. It makes sense for them to stick with the Xbox name. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, even if it transforms into a future where the Xbox is no longer a box and there's no longer a console, it still makes sense for them to hang on to that name, for sure. JD Gamer, thank you so much, man. You're saying the thing to do is GTA 6. If they pay for that exclusivity, it will hurt Sony, just like if they gobble up all the relevant third-party exclusives for the next 5 years. That would hurt PlayStation. That's the thing, though, dude. See, Microsoft has spoken in a way, publicly facing anyway. We know behind the scenes they do want to hurt PlayStation. We know that. And you can't blame them. PlayStation wants to hurt Microsoft. Like, it's competition. They want to hurt each other to get ahead. Obviously, that is the nature of competition. But publicly facing, Microsoft has really tried to play this down and make it seem like, no, we're not out to hurt Sony and we're not going after them. And I think to a certain extent that's true. And this is like, they won't pay for GTA exclusivity because as in Microsoft's mind, there's no reason to. I mean, collectively, like, with their vision and what it is they're looking to achieve. Same thing with buying all third-party exclusives. The moves that Microsoft is making now are for the future. Securing something like GTA 6, when you consider how much money they would have to pay to make that happen, versus it's not permanent. It's not. Like, unless they buy Take-Two Interactive, even then they wouldn't be allowed to. They wouldn't be able to do it. Just, it's not realistic. It's not practical because it would just be a fucking colossal waste of money. It would. Like, would it sell consoles? Hell yeah, it would. Would it get Game Pass subscribers? Hell yeah, it would. But it's like, how many people would they need to subscribe to Game Pass in a short period of time to justify the amount of money they just paid for that? See, that's why when people say, like, did Microsoft waste $68 billion? Like, no, dude, it's not that simple. Like, could it end up being a mistake in the long run? Possibly, yes. But they pay, like, it's an investment for them. They invested $68 billion to have ownership over this company, because the idea is, dude, what we're going to do with the Call of Duty brand and the entirety of this company in the next 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to pay for itself like 5 times over, you know? Like that's how Microsoft is thinking about this. And when you talk about like buying exclusivity, this is where you see a clear separation between the way Sony does business versus the way Microsoft does, where Sony, they can't really think that way because they literally can't afford to. Like they can't think like, I mean, I guess maybe in an extreme case, and maybe this would be an extreme case coming up, I don't know, maybe they could, like people always talk about Sony buying like Take-Two Interactive or something like that. And it's like, yeah, they would only be able to even consider doing something like that with a long-term play. And they would have to be pretty damn sure of it. Like you're not talking 5 years from now. You're not talking 10 years from now. You're talking like 20 plus years from now where it's like, why would we spend billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to own this company? What's the play here? What's the end game? And Microsoft knows their end game with Activision Blizzard. And the end game that Microsoft is aggressively chasing is not, as of right now, the end game that Sony is chasing. But then again, Sony has not been very clear with us. Sony has been a little bit topsy-turvy, a little bit less upfront about what their actual end game is. The only thing that they have been willing to share with us is that they still do prioritize the console. The PS5 is their main priority, selling as many units as possible and selling as many games as possible and live service. Those 3 things are Sony's end game as far as we know. But we're not stupid. We know that they're probably thinking, like it can't, like they're considering other options as well, just in case. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is a wise thing for Sony to do. Even though I want them to continue to focus on the console, I want them to be very careful with their live service efforts. I don't want them to just go chasing Microsoft. I want them to be cautious and not rush anything. But I do think it is wise of Sony to, you can't, I'll put it to you this way. It would be unwise of Sony to underestimate Microsoft at this point. I think that's obvious. Like, even though they're completely decimating them in the console space, they really shouldn't underestimate Microsoft, because Microsoft is out here showing that, like, look, we have the capital to make the change. And we know you don't want to chase us, and we know you won't unless you're forced. So we'll just let time do what it does, and we'll keep hedging our bets, making our investments, and you do you, and we'll see what happens. But Microsoft very much does feel that they are in a position where eventually Sony's going to have to chase them. And that's why I always say I do not want to see Sony chase them, because the day that Sony decides they have to chase Microsoft is the day that the PlayStation business is completely overturned, and the way that they develop games, the way that they make games, the only conceivable way Sony could chase them, and this is kind of an interesting thing to think about, the only way Sony could potentially chase Microsoft, if they ever felt like they had to, is if Sony does actually strike gold. They strike a gold mine and a cash cow with a majorly successful live service game, right? Where it's just like, this thing just prints money. We don't have to do shit anymore. It just does it for us. We just can't stop making money. And Sony grows at a rapid rate because of this live service game. I'm talking like Fortnite level. Again, it's unlikely to happen, but Sony absolutely wants that. If they got that, they would be safe. Like, they would be totally safe, because they could continue to focus on the console and focus on that market safely, continue to focus on single player games safely, and obviously continue to, continue to grow the business, what you would assume to be at a rapid rate, thanks to, hey, we have our cash cow. And if everything else goes wrong, if the console goes out the window one day and people just stop buying single player games, we still got our cash cow and our super successful live service game. Even if our competitor, that being Microsoft, they find immense success with Game Pass, we still have PlayStation Plus. Maybe we won't be able to find the same success, but we have something that Microsoft doesn't, a mega, mega, ultra successful live service game. This is why Sony is chasing this. It is because something Jim Ryan said that Sony does still believe in, even though they've delayed 6 of their live service games. Jim Ryan said that a successful live service game is basically a subscription in it of itself. Right? That was such a revealing statement. That was possibly the most revealing statement. It's kind of obvious when you think about it, but it was the most revealing statement from Sony, from a PlayStation executive, as far as I'm concerned, because it made it clear that it is Sony's way of saying that we do believe in what Microsoft's doing as the future, that being like keeping people subscribed, keeping them coming back, and keeping them constantly giving you money, and you can rake in that quarterly revenue. That's what Game Pass is. Let's rake in that quarterly revenue. We're just going to grow the subs and rake in the revenue. It's just that Sony is taking the opposite approach, where this isn't about having a sub service. It's about creating a game that basically acts as a major subscription service. And if you think about it, this does make more sense for Sony, because it is realistically the only way Sony can maintain their current business model and not completely erode it, while simultaneously chasing, or I guess I should say pursuing something that can have, at the end of the day, the same effect as Game Pass. Now, see, that's where people are underestimating Sony. They are. They're greatly underestimating how Sony is. But people may not be super excited about Sony's pursuit of live service games, and I get it. I'm nervous too, because we don't want to see them ruin their own reputation and ruin their own studios. We don't want to see that. But people are underestimating that this is why I kind of think Jim Ryan may not have been fired, and he may have actually just retired, because Hiroki Totoki, he came out, he's the interim CEO now, he's the president of Sony. He made it clear just a couple weeks ago that we are not changing our strategy. Just so everybody knows, like, we're still aggressively pursuing live service. That hasn't changed. It's just, it's going to be harder than we thought. It's going to take more time than we thought. That revealed to me that Jim wasn't fired. He wasn't. He wasn't asked to step down either. Jim is just, I'll be honest, man, like, it confirmed to me that guy's just tired and he's out. Like, he actually doesn't want to fucking travel anymore. I do think Sony, if Jim, and I'll add this caveat, if Jim did end up having to step down, it may have been because Sony was afraid of any future acquisitions he might make. I think they were happy that he came up with this idea for the live service, because, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but they were maybe nervous that, okay, maybe he fucked up the acquisition of Bungie, because these guys are, they're sinking, and now they're our problem, and we trusted him with that. So maybe that's what could have done it. But I'm saying this because people don't realize that if this really is the future, and I'm going to read these super chats in a moment, but I've seen multiple people say that, dude, Microsoft is chasing the right future here. Like, they're going to win because they're betting on the right horse with sub services, easy access to games. This is why Sony needs, if that's true, this is why Sony needs to they need to develop a successful live service game. They do, because, again, the most important thing I said here, and you have to underline this, a successful live service game is the only way Sony can compete or chase this future with a mega corporation like Microsoft without eroding and destroying their current business model. Believe it or not, Sony finding an incredibly successful live service game is a threat to Game Pass. Not a direct threat necessarily, but a threat in the sense that Sony would have end up achieving the exact same thing that Microsoft did, except A, they didn't have to buy a publisher, and B, they're not actually asking people to subscribe to anything. I don't know if this is making sense to people, but that is the plan that Sony is putting into practice right now, where let's say they come out with a live service game in 2025, and this game just fucking explodes. Like it's the most streamed game. Every top streamers flocking to it, and it's clear. It's like, dude, this might be the next fucking Fortnite, or not Fortnite, but like the next game that's just gonna fucking dominate the charts now. And it becomes clear over time that it wasn't a fluke. It's here to stay. Sony no longer has to worry about Game Pass anymore. Like they just don't. Like there's what that game is going to do revenue-wise is the exact same thing that Game Pass is going to do for Microsoft revenue-wise. The difference is, though, and this is the major difference, Sony, the assumption is that Sony, depending on how they leverage that live service game, PlayStation Plus is either going to grow or stagnate. If PlayStation Plus stagnates, okay, they might not necessarily match Microsoft's revenue potential in the long run. But if they are smart and they find a way to integrate PlayStation Plus, which is a subscription service, with their successful live service game in some way, shape, or form, then you're talking about some synergy there that, yeah, could change the landscape potentially. So again, it's all just stuff that's in motion right now. Nothing is guaranteed, of course. Saying you hope Sony gets their Sea of Thieves moment where the IP is going to suck and then get better over time. Well, we talk about Microsoft hedging bets, the long game, the long term. Sony is too. They're just doing it with live service, and I think that it's a bad look for Sony because that's not what Sony's known for. And live service doesn't necessarily provide value either. I mean, it can provide value. I'm just saying like that the marketing beats of a live service endeavor are not going to match the marketing beats of a subscription service where exclusives are dropping into and please subscribe. You know what I mean? We'll give you good value. The marketing beats are just not going to line up. Novenzer, by the way, I've seen Novenzer multiple times saying that he thinks I'm completely wrong and off the market or off the mark, and I could be, but I'm curious if you're able to try to let me know why that is. I'd be curious to hear. Neutral Zone 1, a member for 6 months, says, did you forget last gen? Xbox didn't sell and the PS4 did crazy. PS4 players are buying the PS5. That doesn't mean Xbox is dead. They're just they are doing better than ever. Well, Neutral Zone. That's why we talked about that. I'm not saying the Xbox brand is dead. I just think, look, maybe the Xbox console isn't dead either. I'm just saying that I don't think Xbox as a console recovers. I just don't. I think they'll have like random bursts here and there. But Starfield was supposed to be the game, and it didn't really do much of anything for the console. It just didn't. It didn't. People right now are not going out and buying Xbox consoles for Starfield. They're just not. So the Xbox brand, I think you're right. It's in a better position than it ever has been. But as a console, it's in the weakest position I've ever seen it in. Maybe except for the PS2, when the Xbox first came out. And that was kind of understandable. But we also have JD Gamer. He says, getting FC/FIFA timed exclusively on Xbox with extra content would immediately revive Xbox in Europe. So there is hope, but would they do it? See, again, man, that's the thing. Microsoft is not in it for the short or midterm. And any exclusivity deals are for the short and midterm. Let me ask you this. Maybe this will help kind of paint a clearer picture. Let's go back to the Xbox 360 era. In the Xbox 360 era, Microsoft, I should say Xbox, because Microsoft still viewed Xbox as a side project. Okay, Microsoft was still an incredibly rich company, but they viewed Xbox as a side project, and they gave Xbox a budget and said, this is how much you can spend, make it work, make us some money, get us some market share. And so because of that budget, Xbox had to, play the game, so to speak. They had to work within a certain rule set. Like, they couldn't go out on an acquisition spree. They had to strike these deals, third-party exclusives, second-party deals, deals for Call of Duty, for map packs and stuff like that. And it worked well for them. It definitely worked. But I want you to picture this scenario for just a second. Imagine during the Xbox 360 era, Microsoft, towards the end of it, right? Going into the Xbox One. Imagine Microsoft bought Bethesda then and bought Activision Blizzard then, because Microsoft decided then that they wanted to make Xbox part of the family. Now, I want you to think for a moment, what position would Xbox, not only as a brand but as a console in both regards, what position would it be in right now if they did that in the 360 gen? Let's say Call of Duty still had to remain multi-plat for 10 years, all the same rules apply, but they had all throughout the Xbox One generation, all throughout this generation now, this entire time, they had Bethesda, they had Activision Blizzard. See, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because Microsoft would be like, they would be in such a strong position that it likely would have by this point already forced Sony's hand, where if Sony had to buy a publisher, they would have. But what it would have guaranteed is that Xbox would be extremely relevant during the entire Xbox One life cycle, regardless of how the hardware performed. It would guarantee that the Xbox Series consoles would have gotten off to a much better start because they have Activision and Bethesda. It would have just guaranteed that no matter what, they're a fucking revenue monster that no matter how their consoles sell or don't sell, they're here and they're here to stay. And the reason for this is because they didn't pay for timed exclusivity. They didn't make third-party deals. They didn't make, they didn't spend money trying to get marketing rights and map packs and all this bonus shit for multiplayer. No, they would have established themselves as, we're not going anywhere. You can't beat us you just can't. You can compete with us, but you can't beat us because we own these. We own like a massive chunk of this industry now. That is the game that Microsoft is playing right now. They do not give a single fuck about timed exclusivity. They will not pay money to make games like FIFA or GTA exclusive. They will pay money to own them, but Microsoft is not in this anymore. Again, like, these are Microsoft moves, not Xbox moves. These aren't moves that, Phil Spencer or anybody prior to Phil Spencer would have ever thought about making, because it just was never a possibility. When Phil Spencer was told, like, hey man, you're part of the family now, do what you want. Phil knew, and this is where he was pretty smart for this, he knew he has to make permanent moves, not temporary moves, not moves that'll guarantee this generation is a success. And he also knew that it means he could probably make moves that his competitors likely can't, now that Microsoft has welcomed in Xbox as part of the family. And I just think that this notion, timed exclusivity for something like FIFA or GTA, at this point in time, Sony, believe it or not, is more likely to pursue something like that. Although I don't think they would, because that still sounds ridiculously expensive. I just don't think Sony would waste money on that. But Sony at this point in time is more likely to try to achieve something like that than Microsoft. Microsoft is in it to own it. Sony obviously wants to be in it to own it as much as they can, but Sony, I think, is taking a much more conservative, believe it or not, conservative and tactical, I don't know what else to call it, approach, where while Microsoft is, blitzkrieging it, fucking bombarding, like we're just kicking down the doors, we're fucking making giant acquisitions, shock and all. Sony is being more tactical, a little bit more stealth-like in a way where they're like, okay, we're not doing any of the super exciting things and we're not really rattling our enemy's cage, so to speak, and attacking them. We're going to work on this area here. We see something here that we feel like this is the answer. This is the best way to go. And really, we have to focus on just making sure we can find success in this endeavor, because if we do, we will win in our own way. And no one can see that now, or very few people can see that now. But if we achieve it, it'll become very clear to everybody that we've won in our own way. And that, I think, right now is truly the biggest difference between the perception of Sony and Microsoft in the competitive landscape when it comes to the future of gaming. What Microsoft is doing is outwardly obvious. Like, obviously, you bought publishers, you're going to own them. And one of these publishers has, again, like one of these publishers has one of the most, if not the most successful live service game in Call of Duty. That's why they bought them, Like, what Microsoft did is shock and awe, right in your face, immediate boom, explosion that's going to catch everybody's attention, because how could it not? What Sony is doing is they're building. It is a weird way, but Sony's building a bomb right now, man. And one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to fucking blow up in their face and destroy them before they can finish it, or they're going to drop that shit. And when they drop it, it's going to fucking, it's going to, everybody's going to notice, and it's going to change the, it's going to change the landscape to a certain extent. So, that's I guess it's a fine metaphor or analogy to use, but obviously we're talking, see, that's why, even though I think, it's not that I think we've had many conversations about Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard, but there's no denying that it was truly the smartest move Microsoft could have made, because we've talked about how like Call of Duty could implode on itself and go downhill and stop making nearly as much money, and that could happen. But I also can't deny that it's like, dude, if you buy Call of Duty and Call of Duty can't be enough, then there's at that point there's something so wrong with this industry that no one's going to survive it. That like the whole industry is going to end up getting nuked itself and crashing and burning, and everything's got to be reset, because it's fucking Call of Duty. Like if you can't make that work, then it's fucking over, dude. It is. Like at that point, the whole industry has to be reset, because I don't, it's just like, if Call of Duty can't make it, what can? What will? I mean, maybe Fortnite, maybe GTA. I mean, maybe these extreme outliers, but I hate to say it, but that we might already be there, guys. Like and I don't mean that Call of Duty's failing. I actually mean the opposite. Like what scares me is that, I don't want to say maybe scares is a strong word, but what makes me kind of take a step back is it just seems like we might already be there, guys, where when I think about what it is Sony's trying to achieve, it's exactly that. It's we need our Call of Duty. We need our Fortnite. We need our GTA Online because without it, we're not going to fucking make it. Why do you think Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard? They bought Activision Blizzard because they're like, we need that to make it. Google and Tencent are out here being like, yo, should we buy Epic Games so we can have Fortnite so we can make it? EA is fucking making it. Do you know how EA is making it? With their live service games. With FIFA, with the sports games. I mean, it's just crazy to think that this industry more and more and more it's becoming clear that it's not that it's shrinking, it's actually it's growing. Well, I mean, it has its ebbs and flows, but it's not shrinking rapidly. It's just that the path to sustainability is seemingly sitting on the shoulders of live service games. And that I don't know what exactly. I'd have to put more thought into it. I have to sit on it for a little bit and think about it and or sleep on it, and think what does that mean exactly? I mean, I'm sure it means many things, but I just don't think there's any denying now that the path to sustainability in this industry is it's falling down to live service games. You're saying I'm all over the place. I know. Today's just one of those days where I just got so many different thoughts running through my head at one time. But just think about it. What are people saying right now when they're like, Sony has to acquire a publisher? They have to. It's like, maybe you're right, but a lot of people would say that Sony has to acquire a publisher that has a successful live service game or two. Even if they acquired Square Enix, they would be acquiring Final Fantasy XIV. So you can kind of understand why Sony's like, look, we don't want to have to go down that road. We don't want to have to do what Microsoft did. Microsoft could never make a Call of Duty. That's why Microsoft got made fun of so much when they were like, Sony, why don't you make your own? Because everybody turned around and said, why don't you make your own if it's that easy? And that's where Microsoft was like, well, we don't have to. We can just buy it. Well, there you go. Shit ain't easy. Shit requires luck. Lightning in a bottle type shit, It happens. It does. It does happen. But it's just far and few in between. And Sony needs that lightning in a bottle. And they're trying to set themselves up for the best chance. People wonder, why are they going so many? Why are they... People have said, and I get it, because I'm in agreement, and I wish it could be this way, but the more I take a good hard look at the industry and the way it's going right now, people have always said, why does Sony go for 12 live service games? Why not just 2 or 3 or 4 at most? Because, dude, you're not, good luck. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Do you know how lucky Sony would have to be to greenlight 3 live service games and assume that one of them is going to hit big? It's just not going to happen. Even 12, it may sound a lot, but even then, that's still not a great... It's better than 3, yes. Your chances are much higher, but it's still not looking that great. It's fucking hard, man, to make a successful live service game. We are witnessing Bungie failing. People are wondering what the future of Call of Duty does look like underneath Microsoft. And I don't know. You don't know. Fortnite's fucking booming. And you know why Fortnite's booming? It's because they fucking brought back their OG map. So they're bringing the nostalgia. We're at a point where Fortnite needs to bring the nostalgia factor to reach new heights. Where is it all going? Well, I'll tell you what. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Because now GTA 6 is about to come out. And of course, we're all going to be super excited about the story mode, the characters, the world. But make no mistake, the money The money is all in GTA Online. GTA 6 is a rare exception where it's going to sell no matter what, and it's going to make a fuck ton of money no matter what. But you better believe that the long term, like right now, what is it? Strauss Zelnick, the CEO of Take-Two, he is turning to the investors and he is preparing them. And he's saying, guys, you're not just going to make a little money. You're not just going to make some money. You're not even going to make a lot of money. You're going to make an unbelievable amount of money in like the next decade or longer, thanks to GTA Online 2. So look forward to it. And that's not even counting our sales. That's where we are. And the question is, okay, what competes with GTA Online 2? You know the answer to that? Fucking nothing. That's the answer to that. GTA Online 2 is its own sub, man. They have GTA Plus. They have a subscription service for GTA Online now for people who want it. Call of Duty is now, I noticed with the Call of Duty Hub, is that what they're calling it now? They're calling it the Call of Duty Hub, where they're just going to have, they're turning it into more of a service. It's all happening. It's like, this is why I have tried to express to PlayStation fans that, like, you can't be upset. You just can't. I mean, you can if you want, but it's like, if you are trying to have any understanding of what's happening in this industry, you cannot be upset for Sony pursuing live service games. You don't have to give a shit about them. You don't have to support them. You can root for their failure, but you cannot be upset with them, because we are at a point where it's almost like they don't have a choice. They don't. They just don't. It's pretty much like out of necessity at this point. And I say that as somebody who's extremely nervous about it. I do. I do say that frequently. I'm extremely nervous about it, but it's just, there's no denying anymore. There's no denying anymore. Look at what Take-Two Interactive did with Red Dead Online. They dropped that shit like a bag of hammers when they realized this isn't doing GTA Online numbers. Not even close. And it's crazy because, like, that game sold over 50 million copies. Like, that's that is, I mean, that tells you all you need to know. That game sold over 50 million copies, and the online player base was absolutely begging Take-Two to please do something over here. But Take-Two was like, that's not our future, man. We can't make a sub-service for the Red Dead Online component. That's not going to make enough money. We can't dedicate resources to this. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's wild. It's getting crazy out here, man. Mark my words. You don't even have to mark my words. You already know it, guys. When we watch the Game Awards on December 7th, which is arguably one of the at this point, the Game Awards might be the biggest, event of the year for reveals. I'm trying to think of something at this point that would match it. Half the shit is going to be live service. And not just like new live service. I mean, like updates to current live service. It's been that way for a long time, but it's just continuing more and more. And it's just becoming clearer and clearer. I know people think that, like, oh, Warner Brothers states that we need to go with live service games. We need to go with live service games. People are like, what are you talking about? You have the best-selling game of 2023, a single-player game with Hogwarts Legacy. What are you talking about? That should tell you all you need to know. Because I know people think it boils down to just greedy corporate executives. It's not just that. It's the market itself, man. The market is literally telling WB, telling Sony, telling Microsoft, telling everybody, you gotta have live service games. It's a requirement at this point. It's a necessity. Boss is thinking, I hate live service games. So we'll see what happens, man. live service games can be good. I know that there are people that are aggressively against them, but they can be good. They can be fun. There's a reason why people gravitate towards them. MBG Nintendo has a choice, and they're choosing sustainability with high quality games that don't break the bank. You're right, and I hate that it has to be this way, but my evaluation of that Devil Shooter is that Nintendo is truly like they are in a very unique position where I don't think anybody else in this industry can do what Nintendo is doing. And I think if anybody else, even including Sony, unfortunately, tried to do what Nintendo is doing, they would fail. I think it is I think a byproduct of Nintendo being here from the literal like beginning of like this industry and like just kind of being a part of it and being, you know, having that extra time to figure shit out, to establish your intellectual properties, to grow your business, to, of course, Nintendo has had to change with the times and they still will. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the future Nintendo themselves does decide. You're saying Nintendo does have games as a service. They have Pokemon Go, Pokemon Unite, Pokemon Master. Yeah, well, I guess so. I don't know. Is that true? I'm not familiar with the Pokemon. I know Pokemon Go, but I just think that the something else that we have to consider with Nintendo though is Nintendo is okay not trying to I don't say be the leader, but they're okay just existing in their own space, even if that means they're dwarfed. Doesn't mean they're not successful, doesn't mean they're not a massive company, billions and billions of dollars, but it just means the company that's next to you is dwarfing you. They don't care about that. Unfortunately, I think Sony does care about that. I do. And I don't know. Maybe we could have that conversation where maybe they shouldn't care about it, but I don't like the thing about Sony and their games though is that like, dude, Spider-Man 2 isn't doing well, I can't speak to Spider-Man 2 yet because we have to see how it does. God of War Ragnarok isn't doing Nintendo numbers, like it's not doing Zelda numbers. It's not. Like dude, if God of War Ragnarok was doing Zelda numbers as quick like in the same time frame, I'm certain Sony would try to figure out like how do we replicate this. And they're still trying to replicate, well, hey, we're still doing good numbers. Let's try to replicate that. But Nintendo really is in this just unique position where, I mean, their games, man. I'll just be blunt. Sony doesn't have the same IP power as Nintendo. They just don't. They have very strong intellectual property. They do, and they have games that'll do very well, but they just don't have the same power. I don't know who else in this industry does. It's not just exclusive to Sony. Microsoft certainly doesn't. I don't think Valve does. I don't know who does. I mean, maybe sometimes people think of like Sonic, but even then it's like that's still not comparable, I don't think. So I just don't know that even well, yeah, I guess maybe Rockstar with the GTA intellectual property. Yeah, maybe that's true. But that's just one IP. Dude, Nintendo has that with like multiple IP. Granted, I don't know. We'll see what GTA 6 does. I think GTA 6 might end up being a very unique kind of like unicorn type situation. We have to see how it unfolds. You're saying Call of Duty and Elder Scrolls are bigger than everything, but Oh, well, okay, yeah, that's true. I guess I was talking. You're right. You're right. Microsoft did just acquire some of the biggest IP that are up there now. I guess I was referring to like their own, like the IP that they built themselves, like internally. Like maybe Halo at one point would have been up there, but yeah, now they do have that with Elder Scrolls and Call of Duty. And that's where, dude, when Sony says they don't want to get left behind, this is what they mean. This is what they mean. And so Sony's doing very, very well, but they don't want to get left behind in that, like, the power, the paradigm of what makes a gaming company powerful does shift, you know? Novinzer, you're saying Xbox isn't appealing to future gamers. If there's no console, then you might as well not exist. Kids don't know about Game Pass. Most people and kids see console equals games. Kids aren't seeing Xbox. Maybe you're right. I don't know. That's a tough one to determine, I think. You might be right. But it could be, I don't know. It could be a little bit more complex than that, where I don't know. That's the thing. Is like I would have to sit here and assume what kids are seeing these days. I'm not sure. Yeah, kids are probably seeing mobile games more than anything, if I had to guess. All right, guys. Really quick, I want to say I've been sitting on a lot of super chats for a long time. I do apologize for that. Sometimes I just get rambling, and I just take too long. So if you're somebody who donated a super chat and I'm just now getting to it, thank you so much for your patience. It really doesn't mean a lot. B Flesher, a member for 6 months, says MBG eventually consoles are going to die off. Our TVs will have cloud, and devices like the Portal will be how 99% game with cloud. Sony knows too. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure Boss isn't chewing my wires again. Bro, I'm going to have to ask you to move away from the wires. Yeah, so it is difficult for me to say you're right, B Flesher. I think you might be. You probably are realistic. Like if I'm being realistic, but I just don't want to say you're right because I just don't want to believe that. Like I want to live in denial. Straight up. When it comes to the idea of cloud gaming being the way, like you're saying 99%, like pretty much everybody, like that's how we game now. I want to live in denial because truthfully, I do believe that if you are right about that, like if that's how 99% of people are gaming, like you're kind of a weirdo if you're not gaming through the cloud. I'm pretty sure by the time we get to that point, I will be so old that I will be that weirdo. Like I'll be sitting there with my PS5 being like, I'm playing Demon Souls back in the good old days, like, yeah, that'll probably be me. Maybe not. I mean, it depends on how quickly we're going to get there. And that's the thing that I choose to live in denial about, where it's like, there's always like this kind of conversation, like it's coming quicker than you think. And it's like, but is it? You sure about that? I'm not so sure about that. Maybe it is. But I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that the cloud future that you're speaking of here. Yeah, I'm going to be in a nursing home like demons. Oh man, I don't know. I don't think I want to live that long. Not to be too dark, but I don't know that I want to live that long. I don't know that I want to live long enough that I'm in a nursing home, because it's just like, I don't know. Would I even be able to play games at that point? What is my life at that point? I don't know. Not getting too dark too quickly. I do that sometimes. I apologize. But it's like, if in the next 10 years, like it's a simple question like this. Here's a question I have for you guys. All right, and I'm going to move on to the next super chat. How well do you think the PlayStation 6 is going to sell? How well do you think it's going to sell when it comes out? So the PlayStation 6 is rumored to be launching around 2027, 2028. Let's say it lasts, again, that generation lasts to like 2034, 2035, give or take. How well do you think it's going to sell? 70. That's a good estimate. You're saying 75% as well as the 5. That's a pretty good estimate. Saying very well, not very well if the Pro is out. As good as the PS5, but not better. Devil Shooter says he's planning on going to PC over PlayStation 6. So generally speaking, everybody is saying they expect it to sell well or very well, or at least as good or close to the PS5. And right now, it's clear that the PS5 is going to sell well. The PS5 could hit a brick wall in the next 3 years, but I feel like the only way that would happen is if Sony really fucked something up really badly, which is possible, but I just don't think it's likely necessarily. Okay, well, let's see. This is where things get tricky. If the PlayStation 6, let's say it sells well, but it sells like, all right, let's say the PS5 ends up selling a lifetime total of 135 million units. Lifetime PS5 sales, 135 million would be very successful. And then let's say we reach the end of the PlayStation 6 life cycle and it sells 105 million units or 110 million units. How do we feel about the PlayStation 7 then? You know? Or here's another thought. Do you think it's possible that it just happens suddenly? Do you think it's possible that the PlayStation 6 will do fine, PlayStation 7 will do fine, and then boom, we're talking about being in the year like, 2039, 2040, some shit like that, which is crazy to think. But, we're like way in the future now, and then just boom, out of nowhere, holy shit, nobody's buying the PlayStation 8. Like, these console sales have tanked. Do you think that's what's going to happen? And it's going to be like, oh, it's because everybody decided they just want to play through the cloud now. They want to just play right through their TV, or they have it on their phone or whatever. They just buy controllers now. No one buys consoles, they just buy controllers. Could it happen that way? Like, see, I'm really just trying to map it out and think about how it could realistically happen, because it just seems to me that there is no clear indicator that people are just going to drop the console like that. Like, I think some kind of revolution would have to happen, and maybe that could happen. Maybe Sony will be the one. Fuck, man, maybe Sony will bamboozle me, and they'll be the one to do it. Where they're like, we're fully embracing cloud gaming now. Access the PlayStation Store and the PlayStation ecosystem. Log in with your PSN on your TV, on any device, on your phone, everywhere, and play through cloud. Yeah, maybe that could be it. You might be right about that. And if Sony does decide they want to, go that direction, then yeah, that could be what kills their future console sales. Because I'll be honest, man, like I would still buy a PlayStation console no matter what, but I could totally understand why. Like, if you tell like a regular, casual average Joe consumer, who's out there, I buy PS5 to play FIFA with my friends or Call of Duty or whatever, Minecraft, both Microsoft-owned games, whatever it might be, right? If you tell them, well, you don't have to do that. Like, you can just buy a controller and, you just download the app on your TV, you log in, and boom, you have a PS5 dashboard right there, and you just stream the game. And the technology is so advanced that it's like, you really won't notice any difference. I mean, yeah, I could totally understand why people would be like, well, then why the fuck would I pay $500 or $600 for like a PlayStation 7 at that point or something? So really interesting. I'm really curious. To see what the future of the console space ends up looking like, because it really does seem to me like it's a mystery right now. Again, I choose to be glass half full, optimistic, but they'll beam it into my brain. Yeah, I could see that happening as well. At that point, what, who knows? Maybe Sony will stick with PlayStation VR, and 20 years from now, it'll, some kind of major breakthrough with VR gaming will happen, and Sony will be able to do something like that, and it'll be like PSVR 4. And it like revolutionizes gaming, and Microsoft is left out, and maybe Nintendo too, because like they didn't embrace VR. Yeah, maybe what seemed to be Sony's biggest failure in sticking with VR in the long run would actually be their biggest savior. Wouldn't that be crazy? I mean, it sounds silly, but it's like maybe that is where things are headed. Because if you think about it, like, okay, we talk about cloud technology, we talk about ease of use, but VR is a level of immersion that has so much future potential that it's like in the long, long run, maybe that is where we're gonna end up. Where it's like, yeah, you just fucking put on, you put these two things in your ear, and boom, you're just like, it just does something to your brain, and you're like, you're fucking in the game. I don't know, man. What the hell am I even talking about at this point? Ice Razo with a $5 super chat says, MBG, the console market has grown for over 20 years. Sean Layden points that out. No console will ever reach 200 million sold. We have reached saturation. Yeah. Yeah, I think you are right about that. I think you're right about that because it seems to me the reason why we've reached that point of saturation is because of just the gaming industry as a whole growing, where now again, like, people, there are so many mobile developers, there are so many indie games, different ways to access these games. I think gaming has proved to be so ubiquitous that it's like, the console was never really going to be like the singular thing, you know? Just like PC was never going to be, but just like mobile gaming will never be a singular thing. I guess I'm saying, like, I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily if the console market kind of stays where it is and doesn't really grow much beyond where it is, because it's like, it's fine. It's still good. Like, there's still a lot of money to be made, a lot of success to be found for anybody who's interested, like Sony and Nintendo. But it is true that, like, as the market continues to evolve and as gaming becomes more and more ubiquitous and just more streamlined and more appealing, frankly, to the casual market. What the hell is that noise? Sorry. Oh, it's storming outside. That's the noise. I was like, what the hell is that? But yeah, as the industry begins to, or not begins, but continues to grow at the rate it is, and again, it has its ups and its downs, but it's a massive industry. There are more game devs than ever before. There are more games in development than ever before, all different sizes. I understand why these companies are going to say, like, we have to try to appeal to these different markets, because it's like, it's all the same market, right? Because it's video games, but there are just so many different segments. Like, one of the things we're going to talk about before we close out the stream today is there's a mobile PlayStation studio that is rebranding, and it's like a mobile PlayStation studio. Like, I can't even begin to express how little excitement I have for that. But I understand. I understand why Sony's like, we gotta try to do this. Like, do you see the market out there? Do you see the market potential? It's like, yeah, I get it. I guess I get it. So, Ice, thank you for that. We have Kyle Film saying 2035 cloud and AR might be the norm. The hardware might not be that important anymore. It's like how people only stream movies these days. DVD and Blu-ray is still there, but that's for those few people. Well, you're right. You're right, Kyle. And we could be headed down that way. But I'm telling you right now, it's like we're seeing problems. We're seeing problems pop up. I just saw somebody put out a post the other day. Who I think it was somebody basically advocating for buying physical media when it comes to movies and supporting physical media with movies and TV, because somebody pointed out that there was like this movie, I forget the name of it, on Netflix that's just gone. It's just gone. Like, it was just erased. Yeah, I think it was Christopher Nolan. And somebody had, like, quote tweeted the quote from Nolan saying that they went to go watch this movie because apparently it was only available on Netflix, and it was just gone. Like, Netflix just removed it. It was just erased. And it's like, I don't know, man. That to me is why I just don't know that. I understand. Was it Hush? Oh, yeah. I never did get to see that. I like Mike Flanagan. Now, I don't see. To be fair, I didn't research. Maybe I need to do my research. I don't know if that's the only place Hush is available, but at least the person who was talking about it certainly made it seem like it was the only um place where it was available. But that is where we're headed, where it's like these things are either not going to be preserved or there's only one way to access it, and that it's in complete control and in the hands of a company that if the day comes, which it will, where they're like, okay, we got to shut this down now for whatever reason, or we got to pull this now, or if we just want to, we're just going to get rid of it now because it's just, you know, it's just taking up virtual space or whatever. They could do that, and there's just nothing anybody can do about it. You're saying Mike Flanagan actually tweeted about it. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, this is you're saying live streaming is now censored games and outfits and movies, taking out people and change. Yeah, I've seen that stuff too, and that's where I'm saying, like, see, this is why like everybody who is sprinting towards that like convenient, I just want gaming to reach the same place that movies and TV is reached and where music is reached, is like I really don't know that you want to rush towards that or even ever get to that point, because what people don't seem to realize, and it's so simple, but it is the truth, is that what these companies have discovered is that people are willing to give up options and give up, if not options, the ability to have more control over their media, right? To have more control. People are willing to give that up for the sake of convenience. And that sucks, because it's like I I get that like most people don't care, but I feel like they should a little bit. At least enough to not sprint towards that future where it's like, look, I'm not saying you have to be passionate about the gaming industry or the movie industry or any of this stuff, but it's like if you partake in it, you should at least be aware enough that, dude, these are corporate entities that want to strip all control from you and make sure you own literally nothing and have no control over it. Don't just willingly give that. Yeah, it is a Trojan horse. Yeah, convenience is the Trojan horse. Absolutely. Don't just willingly hand that over. I'm not going to fault any, like, dude, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I don't stream movies and stuff, but it's just, you gotta, you, you just gotta be aware. Like, if somebody says, I don't care, I don't want to own anything, okay, like, that's fair. I'm not going to argue that, because it's like, well, if you don't care, you don't care. You don't care about owning a movie. You don't care if that movie's erased one day. I get it. Like, I'm getting older. I get that way sometimes with things. It's like, yeah, there are plenty of movies that I've only seen one time and I have no desire to ever watch again. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, man, I'm so afraid if it disappears. Like, I don't know. There's probably a fucking movie I saw this year that if it just were to disappear, I wouldn't even have a second thought. But it's just the idea that like we could reach a future where I think just people seemingly underestimate, like, once you pass a certain threshold where it's like, I've given this company and their brand and their service and everything they offer, I've given them this much power. Okay, well, what do you think they're going to do with that? You think that they're going to think about you and what you want, knowing that not just you, but everybody has collectively given them that power? No, they're going to think about what they want. And they're going to think about the shareholders. And they're going to think about what's best for the business. And it just so happens that you having any type of ownership, you having any type of control, is actually not great for the business. But luckily for them, you don't care about that. So now they get to do what they want. And again, I'm not trying to be so doom and gloom. I do think that sometimes, and myself included, it's easy to get overly, blow these things out of proportion, I guess. But it's just when we talk about like this future in gaming of, talk about like streaming games, cloud, AR, digital storefronts and digital only consoles and all this stuff, it does get kind of concerning where it's like, I don't know. I don't trust. I think that's all it comes down to. I do not trust corporate entities to do right by me or do right by the art, to do right by any of that, because they're a corporate entity. They're only going to do right by themselves. They're only going to do right by their shareholders. They're only going to do what's right for the bottom line. So, and Josh, we have 2 super chats from you. You're saying here, PSVR 2 family rejoice. Vertigo 2 release date December 12th. One of the top 5 VR games out with the likes of Alex. Same with that Wandered Fragment of Fate game. Fire. PSVR 2 is definitely a niche. It won't garner huge sales numbers, but I have seen a 10-month-old peripheral. I have never seen a 10-month-old peripheral with this many games released in 1 year. Incredible. Yeah, man, you're definitely not the only one. You're definitely not the only one that has come to my channel, obviously, and expressed your love and enthusiasm for PSVR 2. I have to admit that I have not been nearly as avid of a player, and I haven't been as engaged with PSVR 2 as I thought I would have been when I first picked it up. But I don't feel necessarily bad about it, because it's like, well, I still think I'm more engaged with it than most other people, because I think most other people don't have it. But I think you're right, and it's definitely niche. But it really is true that PSVR 2 has gotten good support. I just don't. I think I speak for a certain demographic of people, maybe most people, when I say that I am somebody who would like to see more AAA support for PSVR 2, but I also am completely understanding as to why it's pretty limited. And maybe I'm being unfair because I know that there are plenty of great AA or smaller indie games on VR2 that people love. So I don't make it sound like these games aren't worth it or anything. But that's just the type of gamer I am, where I definitely gravitate more towards the AAA type experiences. Yeah, I'm surprised like Konami hasn't done anything with Silent Hill for VR. They're making, and maybe maybe we just haven't heard about it yet, but they're making this big comeback with Silent Hill and Metal Gear, and it would be really cool to see them try to do something in that area with those games. But Josh, yeah, you've been here for a while now talking about VR2, super excited about it, and I'm still patiently waiting for Resident Evil 4 VR, man. Like I'm just waiting for them to give us that release date, because I'm definitely going to dive into that for sure. And I'm really curious when we get another proper show from Sony, what potential VR announcements they may have, specifically from their studios, because the only PlayStation Studio title we've gotten, the only PlayStation Studios title we've gotten for PSVR 2 is called The Mountain. And I'm like, well, surely there has to be more they're working on. Actually, you're saying I'm missing out on a lot of amazing games by limiting myself to just AAA games. I know. I won't lie to you, man. Like, one of the biggest reasons for that is because I fucking hate going into the PlayStation Store. I do. Like, I just can't stand it. I mainly buy my games like from Amazon or from other retail stores, because I just hate the PlayStation Store, dude. Like, I hate it. Disgusts me. It does. Like, when I go to check like PS5 games, and there's just, I don't even know what the fuck I'm looking at. I feel like I'm looking at a mobile game store, and I'm just like, I want nothing to do with this. And I'm sorry, like I feel bad, because like I'm sure there's some diamonds in the rough here, but I'm sorry, it's in a fucking sea of garbage, and I'm good. So what I end up doing is, usually when I do my game browsing, I'm usually doing it on on a retailer website, and I know that there's like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of games, maybe not thousands and thousands, but hundreds of games I'm missing, but I can't help it. I'm just like, I need that kind of. I will say though, something I could get better at is I know Sony does try to, and to be fair, to give credit to the PlayStation Store, Sony does have these different categories where I noticed they're having a big Black Friday sale. I don't know for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if they have like a section for indies like it's catered. Maybe I would do well to start looking, actively seeking that out and seeing what else might be there. Some smaller indie games that are considered like this is not, literal trash. It's actually pretty good. But yeah, man, it really like the way that these storefronts have been just fucking littered with trash. It has, I'll be frank, it has skewed my opinion of indie games. It has actually hurt my my outlook on indie games because I'm just like, this is bullshit. This is bullshit, like. And if you guys have looked at some of this stuff, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. So, Josh, thank you so much for the super chats, my friend. We also have Richard Rodriguez with 2 super chats here. Thank you for being patient, man. I know I'm like an hour late. I apologize. You're saying, what if PS/GTA exclusives and day one premium for $1 billion? Sony needs to buy small studios with staggering releases. That way we don't have any 2022s. Then Apple, I think you meant to say 2023. I'm pretty sure that's what you meant to say because 2022 is actually a pretty good year for Sony in terms of having consistent releases. Then Apple's partnership and a year GTA exclusive and day one premium. Well, so here's the thing. This is something. What you're basically pointing out here, Richard, is something that somebody pointed out earlier in a super chat, but on Microsoft's side, and I did say that it's more likely that Sony would pursue something like this. Again, something we have to understand with when we talk about games like GTA, we throw around the word like exclusivity because I think we're under the impression that Sony can just pay for that. But we have to understand that it's a two-way street. Like Take-Two Interactive would have to actively be willing to negotiate that possibility with Sony. And there's every chance that it's just not on the table. It's not. Like for all we know, Sony would be willing to pay for GTA exclusivity, but they're like, no. This is one of those games where they just know like the potential we have to be everywhere and as many places as possible outweighs any amount of money we would agree to with you. It just does. Because Sony does have their limit too. Sony's not going to go up to them and say, we'll pay $2 billion. Like, no, they would never, not in a fucking million years. Never in a million years would Sony ever pay even $1 billion for a timed exclusive. Because they would never agree to permanent exclusivity. They would never do it. It would just never happen. So I guess I'm just trying to say that like deals like this are on a level that, frankly, I don't think exists. If this level does exist, we have yet to see it. The closest thing we ever got was Microsoft paying for, I think, 1 month exclusivity. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was 1 month exclusivity for GTA 4 DLC. Let me know if I'm misremembering that. And I think that's as far as we've ever seen. But going back to GTA 4, dude, the sales potential of GTA 4 was high, but like, dude, again, nowhere near what we're seeing with GTA 6. Nowhere near. So this is where you're saying Sony needs to buy smaller studios. You're saying like maybe studios that are going to produce more AA games more frequently. I'm not so sure. I mean, I obviously want to see that, but what Sony does know is that there's always going to be room in this industry for more partnerships. There's always, even though games like GTA 6 are off limits for timed exclusivity, many other games are not. Sony is going to continue to pursue this, at least I would assume they are, because there's always going to be games and studios and developers that are willing to work with Sony and say, what kind of money do you want to pay us for timed exclusivity or possibly permanent? and it's reasonable. It is on the table. That I think is going to continue to exist with Sony. So I don't think they need to necessarily feel pressured to buy smaller studios to fill those gaps. I think Sony does still feel pretty comfortable working with partners. In fact, they stated as much where recently Sony's Eric Limpel did an interview, and he said that right now Sony is very, very, very interested in furthering their partnerships. Securing an exclusive game by From Software is massive. Like, I'm not saying that they did do that, but it seems likely they did, and it's like that is likely going to do more for Sony this generation than buying a smaller studio and waiting for them to release a game and hoping that their game is received well. Sony, frankly, just doesn't seem to have any interest in smaller AA studios unless they can grow those studios to eventually become AAA. I think this is just something that it's just because it doesn't really benefit Sony, frankly. Like I'm not saying I would be against seeing some of these smaller games, but Sony doesn't do it because I just think that they don't. It just doesn't help them. It's like they know what gets people excited. The bigger AAA games get them excited. They know the big IPs get them excited, and these smaller games, yes, they can help when it comes to like the list wars and being like, well, but it's like it's ridiculous because even like right now, people are like shitting on Sony, being like, Sony doesn't have any games. It's like, dude, do you have any idea how many exclusive games are releasing on PlayStation next year? Like, this is where it's just the idea that Sony's gonna not panic, but like say, you know what, we got to go buy a bunch of smaller studios, even though that goes against our actual business model, because people are wondering where our PlayStation studio titles. I am reaching a point where it's like I'm willing to accept now that, listen, Sony said you want AAA games, right? Yeah, I do. Okay, you want them to be very high quality, right? From our studios. Yes, I do. Well, you're going to have to wait. It's going to take time. And in the meantime, we're probably going to have some partnership exclusives for you. Does that sound good? And I'm like, yeah, it sounds pretty fucking good to me. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But if Sony does start buying smaller studios to kind of fill in the gaps, that would signify a change in their approach to their business model. And it would be a little bit surprising because like that at that point, that is kind of going more towards the Microsoft side of things, where Microsoft's Matt Booty, he stated multiple times, I think in the past, that they're more focused on trying to provide AA games. I don't know, maybe their approach has shifted now with Activision Blizzard, but they made it clear that it's about more so there'll be AAA games, but mostly AA, so that they can get a game out every quarter and they can keep feeding Game Pass. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different approach. And it does mean that if most of your games are going to be AA, then you're going to have less AAA games, and you might not be able to make a game that's on the same level AAA-ness wise, right? As Sony, if you're not willing to take 6 years, to make one game. But I don't know. Then again, like, is Hellblade 2 going to be AA? I'm thinking Hellblade 2 is going to be AAA, and that game's been in development for like 5 or 6 years or something like that. So maybe they did change their approach. I don't know. Or maybe we're just finding out that AA games are actually just starting to take longer development-wise as well. Phantom Blade Zero. I think Phantom Blade Zero is definitely AAA. Definitely. No doubt about it. So Richard, I really appreciate the super chats, man. And again, I apologize keeping you waiting. We have Chris B with the $2 chat saying, could they make Minecraft work? Chris, I'm sorry, man. Oh, God. See, this is why I hate being so late. You sent this at 1:45 p.m., so it's like 45 minutes later. Chris, if you're still in the chat with me here, which I hope you are, can you remind me, can you tell me what this isn't, like, what's the context here? Because I don't quite remember exactly what I was saying in that 45 minutes ago. See, this is the problem, man. This is why I got to stop hanging on or waiting so long to read these super chats. Chris, if you're in the chat, let me know, man. Let me know. I feel bad. He said he had to get food. Shit. Well, that means he's gone. That means he's gone. Does anybody remember? Does anybody remember what I was saying? You know what? I remember seeing this super chat pop up, and something was telling me, like, just acknowledge it now because you're gonna forget it. Like, you're not gonna remember what you're talking about. And I chose not to. So, Chris, dude, I'm so sorry. Maybe you can. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you can leave a comment if you come back to this stream, Chris, and let me know what this is in context to, and I'll give you a better answer. How long? It was about 45 minutes ago. That's my bad. That's my bad. Is anyone else having stutter in the audio? Guys, are you having any? Is there any audio issues happening right now? I am touching my mic a lot, so that could be what's doing it. I should probably stop doing that. No, it might be on your end, man. Everybody's saying they're good. All right. Perfect Image with a $5 super chat says Nintendo makes good games for the consumer, and also their subscription plan is way lower than Xbox and Sony. Also, you're great at what you do. Keep it up. Well, thank you for that, man. That's very kind. It's very kind. Hanzo, you're saying it reads, could they make Minecraft work from Crispy? Yeah, no, I see the chat. I'm just like, I understand like the chat, like what he's asking, like, could they make Minecraft work? I just am trying to remember, like, in the context of what? Like Microsoft making Minecraft work? I feel like we were talking about live service games. Like, I feel like he'll have to remind me, man. Because I don't want to give, like, I don't want to sit here and even attempt. I don't want to attempt to give an answer when I'm just know I'm not fully understanding the context of what we were discussing at the time. Because I'm sure what he said was a perfect question to ask in that moment. And that's why I feel bad for missing the moment to read it. But Perfect Image, I agree with you. You're saying Nintendo makes good games for the consumer, and also their subscription plan is way lower than Xbox and Sony. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, in a way, it's almost like Nintendo is fine. Again, they just continue to find their own way to stay, I don't say relevant, because obviously they're always going to be relevant, but like, yeah, they do have their own subscription service now, but it is very different from Sony and Microsoft's, and it's so it's so deprioritized. But I haven't really seen. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with it, and I haven't seen people like complain about it too much. But it seems like people are fine with it because it's just dirt cheap. Like, it's really, really cheap. Like, it's much cheaper than Sony's. Cheaper than Microsoft's. And again, when we have these conversations, like, would I rather Sony follow in Nintendo's footsteps or Microsoft's, or forge their own path? Right now I think Sony's trying to forge their own path. I think Sony wants to try to achieve something that hasn't been achieved yet by them, and that is, we have incredible single player studios. We have juggernaut titles that an IP that do very well, and they sell very well, and they are the identity of our brand. But we are in an industry now where multiplayer gaming is more prevalent than ever, but it's in the form of live service. And we have all these partners and all these publishers and all these games that they put on our platform. We make money from them, but we only make 30%. They're raking in the big bucks. Meanwhile, we're not struggling, but we are under pressure every quarter, every year, to make sure that when we launch a game, because it takes so long to develop and there's so much money put into it, it's got to land. There is no in between. It's got to land. We have no safety net, or very little safety net. We have very little wiggle room, I guess you could say. So I think Sony's trying to achieve having their single player stuff stay the way it is, continue to grow and sell as much as they can, sell consoles, but again, live service, and I think that if they can hit that like kind of trifecta type thing going on there, I mean, even Microsoft won't have that. Even though Microsoft does have Call of Duty, see, Sony has something Microsoft doesn't in the console space, and that is they can sell a fuck ton of consoles, and they are selling a shit ton of consoles. And the reason why that's important is because that automatically makes people more engaged. Like, people who buy a console for $500 are way more likely to stay engaged with your ecosystem than a person who only has to pay $10 to subscribe. They're two very different things. So that's why if Sony, Microsoft has Call of Duty now, they have it, and they have Minecraft, they have successful live service games. If Sony can hit that kind of, check off every box. We're selling consoles really well. We're killing it with the single player games. Now we just need that live service. And if they can hit all three, they're golden. If Sony can do that, they're golden, man. Like, they won't have to worry. At least not that much. The biggest thing they'll have to worry about is keeping all of it organized and flowing, and supporting a live service game can be difficult as well. But if they can get it working, that'll be we will see Sony reach a level they've never reached before in gaming. And I'm here for it. Look, man, I'm very worried about Sony's live service, but I am excited in the sense that, like, I'm willing to see, like, what do you have for me? Like, what are you guys cooking up? We need to keep in mind that the goal of Sony with their live service is to win us over, to attract us to the product, to excite us about it, to get us to want to spend money on it. That is not easy to do. But Sony, they may not be experts in live service, but they are expert game devs. Like, they are experts in this area. So it's like, if they can manage to do that, for me, it's only going to happen one way. Did you make a really fun and engaging game that I want to keep playing? And that's it. So Perfect Image, thank you for that, bud. We have Neo Exodus saying, watch the gameplay trailer for Arizona Sunshine 2. I might have to check that out. I've been seeing some people talk about that. I think that's that zombie game, isn't it, for PSVR 2? Probably not going to watch it during the stream, but I think you know what? Actually, I may have watched one of those trailers, or maybe I'm remembering the one that we saw. Didn't that show up at the showcase? I think maybe that's where it was announced. I don't know. I might be getting my wires crossed, but yeah, I'll have to look into it, man. All right, so that was an extremely long discussion, about 2 hours and 40 minutes worth. Of course, with some member stuff thrown in there as well, and going off into a couple different directions. But the main topic of discussion is concluded now. Xbox as a console, just to recap, and then I'm going to move on to the smaller topics, and then we're going to move on to the members lounge. To recap, the Xbox console is seemingly finished in Europe. It's like still going to sell there, like it's going to be sold in Europe, but I don't think Microsoft stands a chance there. The Xbox console in general, its future is very uncertain, in my opinion. The future of the PlayStation 5 specifically seems to be very good. 143% increase in Europe year over year, which is massive. Sony's still finding tremendous success in this area. In terms of the bigger picture, Sony live service, Microsoft, Call of Duty, mobile, Game Pass, Sony continuing with consoles and single player games. A lot of stuff we're still not sure of. Jake, you're saying you got to head off to work now. Well, I appreciate you showing up, man. So that concludes the first topic. The other topics we're going to discuss here are not going to be as long, but just a couple bonus things I want to talk to you guys about. The next one has to do with a PlayStation Studio. This is being reported by Push Square. They say it's often forgotten about, but part of Sony's long-term plan is to establish itself in the mobile gaming space. The PlayStation Mobile Studios division exists, and back in 2022, the company acquired Savage Game Studios as its first sizable dedicated mobile developer. The team has been making a new unannounced AAA mobile live service game, action game specifically, but it seems that things haven't been all smooth sailing so far. As reported by Mobile Gamer, Savage Game Studios has gone through a complete rebrand in the wake of several key team members leaving the studio. It's now named Neon Koi, a new identity that better aligns with our vision for the future, the team said on LinkedIn. Neon Koi represents our culture and the passions of our game project. As mentioned, this new name and look comes following 3 executives resigning from key roles. Nicolas Sebastiani was the head of mobile at PlayStation, but left in June of this year to pursue another opportunity. Since then, managing director and co-founder Michael Katkoff left in July, and general manager Sophie Vo exited in September to focus on her consultancy business. Obviously, others have risen up to take on those responsibilities. The head of technology, Mike McManus, and co-founder and game director Najim Adir are heading up Neon Koi, which has 2 locations in Berlin and Helsinki. That's actually interesting. They must be a pretty big mobile studio if they actually have 2 separate locations. But yeah, this is something that was just announced today where this is again, this is a mobile studio that is making a AAA action game for mobile, and it's a PlayStation game. It's going to be a PlayStation Studios title, and it sounds like this studio has. I mean, I don't know what to make of it. There's so many different moves happening within Sony, within PlayStation specifically with their studios that maybe it's. I mean, it sounds like it's not ideal, right? Like multiple people leaving, they're rebranding. Maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. Like the thing I will say is the reason why some of these people are leaving, it doesn't necessarily sound that bad. Like one just wants to focus on their own business. Somebody just had a different opportunity. So I don't know. It doesn't immediately make me think, okay, well, this game might be doomed, but it is a studio that Sony acquired, and I don't know, man. I want to trust the process as best I can, but the thing about it is I don't know that I'm excited for this game. Again, it's a mobile game. I'm sure it'll be playable on PS5. I have to imagine it would be, but it's a mobile game first and foremost. So this is clearly one of those live service titles that was delayed. I think that's obvious. Sony said that they have 6 live service titles that were supposed to come out by fiscal year 2026 that have now been delayed. I think it's obvious that Savage Game Studios, now known as Neon Koi, I think is that a better name? I guess that's a better name. I don't know. Savage is a pretty cool name, but I don't know. It doesn't matter. It seems like their game is delayed, and hopefully they'll get it together. I'm still very unsure of what any of these games are going to end up turning out like for Sony, because they're just, again, we have yet to see anything live service from PlayStation Studios other than a couple CG trailers. So we have no idea. I'm not going to jump to any conclusions. I just hope that if there are any problems with game development, that they can sort it out and that they can get it where it needs to be. Because I'm not rooting for this game to fail, but I'm definitely not excited for it. So saying boss is so dang cute. I know he's been chilling up here with me today a couple times. Like I said, man, he's a big baby. He likes to he likes to be cuddled a lot. Something happened out there. I don't know what happened. So that's one of the other topics I wanted to discuss with you guys. I'm sorry. Guys, you have to, I don't know if that's coming through. See, this is why I feel like I have to start wearing headphones sometimes when I'm streaming, because I have to sometimes on the fly adjust my, I have to adjust my output. Hold on. What is happening here? Okay. Sorry. I'm having a couple technical issues with my audio. So guys, is my audio still coming through okay? I'm not sure because why does that do that? It just disappeared. I had to adjust my, it is coming through okay? All right. Okay. I had to adjust my gain, and I do apologize for that. But for some reason, when I went to go do that, it just like all of my feedback disappeared. So I have no idea. I'm left in the dark. Yeah, yeah, that's why. Sometimes there's some like background noise, and again, I don't wear as you can see, I don't wear headphones when I'm streaming, so I don't have any mic monitoring. So I don't know like what's coming through or how loud it is. I can hear it very clearly, and I can hear it's it's it. I forget sometimes that like what I'm hearing is not coming through the mic, or if it is, it's extremely faint, and so I start to feel like very like, whoa, I gotta adjust the volume here because I don't want people's eardrums getting blown out or anything. But all right, yeah, he's like, dude, fuck cloud gaming. I hate cloud gaming. No, that what's funny to think is like the really young generation. You're saying it's not the audio, it's the lighting. You're saying the lighting keeps flickering. Is that true? I just lagged a little bit there. You guys having any issues with the lighting? I don't know. I feel like there's always some kind of issue going on. I like no matter what, there's just always something small happening. Um, but yeah, guys, I want to talk to you really again. This is going to be a brief discussion, very quick, but Shinobi602 on Twitter reports Embracer Group has laid off 900 employees, shut down 15 games over its course of restructuring and stabilizing its business, the company has said. Crystal Dynamics have laid off 10% of their staff. Not good. So I just wanted to point this out because we haven't been following it super closely, but we've been following it somewhat where Embracer Group has basically imploded. They're not like completely done for, but it just continues to serve as a warning for any company, no matter how big or how small, that if you're going to consolidate rapidly and you're going to try to buy, so many studios, so many teams, you can't just do so without having a long-term plan in place. Like, I don't think the way Microsoft is doing it is anywhere near the same as Embracer Group. I just still kind of can't believe the way Embracer Group, I can't believe the way that they decided to go about doing this and how they just seemingly didn't see this coming, where it's like it should be fairly obvious that this is a thing that's going to happen. You're going to have to shut down studios because there's just no way you're managing all these studios. There's no way all these studios are going to produce good enough results. It's just not feasible. It's not with the way the industry works now. And so right now, the end result, just one more time, 900 employees laid off, 15 games shut down or on ice, and 10% of Crystal Dynamics laid off. And that's great. It's unfortunate that 10% of Crystal Dynamics was laid off because they're like one of their biggest studios, So the future of Embracer is very uncertain, and we'll have to just continue to see what happens there. But I have one last thing here before we move over to the members lounge that I want to bring to your attention. Let me bring it up here in just a second. Google discussed teaming up with Tencent to buy Epic Games. Driven primarily by Stadia, Google once had a roaring flame of ambition to break into video games. The search giant made a big splash in gaming throughout 2018 with its now defunct gaming streaming platform and storefront Stadia. And to help fortify its billion-dollar disruption, Google planned to invest more into content infrastructure. Google had originally eyed some high-profile deals for Stadia before eventually settling on opening its own first-party labels and entering third-party publishing. According to new findings in the Epic versus Google trial, ex-Stadia lead Phil Harrison had proposed an interesting idea. What if Google could ally with Tencent and completely buy Epic Games shares? This would help supercharge Google's position with co-ownership of Fortnite, which was practically the biggest game in the world in 2018, thanks to the battle royales astronomically high $5.5 billion revenue. Failing that, Google was exploring a potential 20% stake purchase in Epic for the sum of $2 billion. So I wanted to mention this to you guys because it just goes to show. It just goes to show how potentially dangerous these bigger entities like Google and others can be, where it's like, to me, what makes this so interesting is that they were thinking about doing this for Stadia. Now, that's not to say that they would make Fortnite exclusive or anything if they managed to do that. But yeah, that seems like it would have been a hostile takeover. But that would have been done in the name of a cloud only future. Like, that's the only option. Again, that doesn't mean Fortnite would have been ripped off of stuff, but it just would have had a huge implication. It would have solidified Google as a main player in this industry. I don't know that it would. See, the thing is, I don't know that it would have saved Stadia, though. Like, if they ended up getting Epic Games, I don't know that would have saved Stadia. I don't think anything could have saved Stadia. So, it probably a wise move that Google didn't do that. But it just goes to show that, like, these bigger companies that decide they want to enter the gaming market in a more significant way and kind of compete with these platforms. Because let's not forget that Google Stadia did try to compare itself to the PS4 and the Xbox One. And, it basically tried to say, like, if you're playing on Stadia, it's more powerful in a way. You're playing on servers that are it's like, I forget how they marketed it, but like they did use teraflops. I think they said it was like 10 something teraflops or some shit like that. But no one really cared. The point is, no one cared because they're like, yeah, but it's cloud. So it was a really weird way to market it. But it's just interesting to me how Google really did consider trying to make a massive move, to try to solidify Stadia as a valid platform holder. And you just got to wonder, like, who else might be gearing up to do that and what move might they make. So just wanted to give you guys that info. But with that being said, guys, I want to let you know, to all of my channel members, we're going to be moving over to the members lounge now. Okay. We're about to hit the 3-hour mark. So, you're going to see another stream pop up in about 5 minutes or less after this one ends. It's going to be exclusive to members. I want to move on to my outro here. And part of my outro is giving a massive thank you to all of my members. We are sitting at 56 members gifted today, which is an incredible number. Thank you guys so much for that. Really, it's important that everybody understands I am fan funded. You guys power the channel. It is because of your direct support through super chats, through channel memberships, through membership gifting that I'm able to continue to keep the show going. Take the channel in different directions, experiment with different things, and to be frank, just kind of continue to be passionate about gaming in the gaming industry. Boss, I see what you're doing, bro. Yep. Hey, you want some more? You want some more jerky? Is that what you want? He's over there chewing my wires. Like, bro, I saw my wires moving. He's trying to sabotage the members lounge. Is that? I think Boss, I don't know, man. I think Boss thinks the members lounge is his. Like, it's Boss's lounge, because he seems to get a little attitude-y when I announce we're moving to the members lounge. But here, Boss. Come on. Up here. I don't know. Can you eat the big chunks like that? Go ahead. Give it a try. Anyway, yeah. Thank you guys so much for all of the continued support. It really does mean a lot. Everybody who donated super chat, thank you guys so much. I also want to give a big thank you to Devil Shooter, and a shout out to him. He's been doing the timestamps extremely consistently and extremely well. So if you see him in the comments doing the timestamps, give him a big thank you. Oh wow, he took that down to the ground with him. Okay. And the very last thing I'm going to ask you guys to do before you head out is just take a moment, hit that like button. Again, it lets me know that you guys enjoy the content, and it helps with YouTube's algorithm. Okay, so that does it for this stream. If you're a member, keep your eyes peeled. You're going to see a members lounge go up in just a couple of minutes. So I will see you guys over in the members lounge, and to everybody else, until next time, take care, guys.